Chapter 1. Sometimes at night I think that my husband is with me again, coming gently through the mists, and we are tranquil together. Then morning comes, the wavering gray turns to gold, there is a stirring within, as the sleepers awake, and he softly departs. One by one they come out in the early morning sunshine, my son, my daughter, and Puli, the child I clung to who was not mine, and he no longer a child. Puli is with me because I tempted him. Out of my desperation, I lured him away from his soil to mine. Yet I have no fears now. What is done is done. There can be no repining. "Are you happy with me?" I said to him yesterday, being sure of the answer. He nodded, not hesitating, but a little impatient. An old woman's foibles, a need for comfort. But I am comforted most when I look at his hands. He has no fingers, only stubs, since what has been taken can never be given back. But they are clean and sound. Where the sores were, there is now pink puckered flesh. His limbs are untouched. Kenny and Selvin, between them, have kept my promise to him. In the distance, when it is a fine day, and my sight is not too dim, I can see the building where my son works. He and Kenny, the young and the old. A large building, spruce and white. Not only money has built it, but man's hopes and pity, as I know who have seen it grow brick by brick and year by year. My 3 sisters were married long before I was. Shanta first, a big wedding which lasted for many days, plenty of gifts and feasts, diamond earrings, a gold necklace as befitted the daughter of the village headman, Padmini next. And she too made a good match and was married fittingly, taking jewels and dowry with her. But when it came to Thangam, only relations from our own village came to the wedding, and not from the surrounding districts, as they had done before, and the only jewel she had was a diamond nose-screw. "What for you?" my mother would say, taking my face in her hands. "My last-born, my baby. 4 dowries is too much for a man to bear." "I shall have a grand wedding," I would say, "such that everybody will remember when all else is a dream forgotten." I had heard this phrase in a storyteller's tale. For was not my father head of the village? I knew this pleased my mother, for she would at once laugh and lose her look of worry. Once when I repeated this, my eldest brother overheard me, and he said sharply, "Don't speak like a fool. The headman is no longer of consequence. There is the collector who comes to these villages once a year, and to him is the power, and to those he appoints, not to the headman." This was the first time I had ever heard that my father was of no consequence. It was as if a prop on which I had leaned had been roughly kicked away, and I felt frightened and refused to believe him. But of course he was right, and by the time I came to womanhood, even I had to acknowledge that his prestige was much diminished. Perhaps that was why they could not find me a rich husband, and married me to a tenant farmer who was poor in everything but in love and care for me, his wife, whom he took at the age of 12. Our relatives, I know, murmured that the match was below me. My mother herself was not happy. But I was without beauty and without dowry, and it was the best she could do. A poor match, they said, and not always quietly. How little they knew, any of them. A woman, they say, always remembers her wedding night. Well, maybe they do, but for me there are other nights I prefer to remember, sweeter, fuller, when I went to my husband matured in mind as well as in body, not as a pained and awkward child, as I did on that first night. And when the religious ceremonies had been completed, we left, my husband and I. How well I remember the day, and the sudden sickness that overcame me when the moment for departure came. My mother in the doorway, no tears in her eyes, but her face bloated with their weight. My father, standing a little in front of her, waiting to see us safely on our way. My husband, seated already on the bullock cart, with a tin trunk full of cooking vessels, and my saris next to him. Somehow I found myself also sitting in the cart, in finery, with downcast eyes. Then the cart began to move, lurching as the bullocks got awkwardly into rhythm. And I was sick. Such a disgrace for me. How shall I ever live it down? I remember thinking, I shall never forget. I haven't forgotten, but the memory is not sour. My husband soothed and calmed me. "It is a thing that might happen to anybody," he said. "Do not fret. Come, dry your eyes and sit up here beside me." So I did, and after a while I felt better. The tears left my eyes and dried on my lashes. For 6 hours we rode on and on along the dusty road, passing several villages on the way to ours, which was a good distance away. Halfway there, we stopped and ate a meal. Boiled rice, dal, vegetables, and curds. A whole coconut apiece, too, in which my husband nicked a hole with his scythe for me, so that I might drink the clear milk. Then he unyoked the bullocks and led them to the small pool of water near which we had stopped, giving them each a handful of hay. Poor beasts! They seemed glad of the water, for already their hides were dusty. We rested a half hour before resuming our journey. The animals, refreshed, began stepping jauntily again, tossing their heads and jangling the bells that hung from their red-painted horns. The air was full of the sound of bells and of birds, sparrows and bulbuls mainly, and sometimes the cry of an eagle. But when we passed a grove, green and leafy, I could hear mynahs and parrots. It was very warm, and unused to so long a jolting, I fell asleep. It was my husband who woke me, my husband, whom I will call here Nathan, for that was his name, although in all the years of our marriage I never called him that. For it is not meet for a woman to address her husband except as husband. "We are home," he cried. "Wake up, look." I woke, I looked. A mud hut, thatched, small, set near a paddy field, with 2 or 3 similar huts nearby. Across the doorway, a garland of mango leaves, symbol of happiness and good fortune, dry now, and rattling in the breeze. "This is our home," my husband said. "Come, I will show you." I got out of the cart, stiff and with a cramp in one leg. We went in. 2 rooms, one a sort of storehouse for grain, the other for everything else. A third had been begun, but wasn't finished. The mud walls were not more than half a foot high. "It will be better when it is finished," he said. I nodded. I wanted to cry. This mud hut, nothing but mud and thatch, was my home. My knees gave, first the cramped one, then the other, and I sank down. Nathan's face filled with concern as he came to hold me. "It is nothing," I said. "I am tired, no more. I will be all right in a minute." He said, "Perhaps you are frightened at living here alone, but in a few years we can move, maybe even buy a house such as your father's. You would like that." There was something in his voice, a pleading, a look on his face, such as a dog has when you are about to kick it. "No," I said, "I am not frightened. It suits me quite well to live here." He did not reply at once, but went into the granary and came out with a handful of paddy. "Such harvests as this," he said, sliding the grains about in his hand, "and you shall not want for anything, beloved." And then he went out to get the tin trunk, and after a while I followed. Sometimes now I can see quite clearly. The veil is rent, and for a few seconds I see blue skies and tender trees. Then it closes on me again, and once more I am back in a world of my own, which darkens a little with each passing day. Yet not alone, for the faces of those I have loved, things that have been, shapes, forms, images, are always before me, and sometimes they are so vivid that truly I cannot say whether I see them or not, whether the veil is lifted to allow me the sight, or whether it is only my mind that sees. Today, for instance, I could see the brook that ran near our paddy field so clearly that I felt I had to but stoop to feel its wet water on my hands. Yet that brook belongs to a part of my life that is finished. I was a bride of only a week when I first followed it to look for a suitable place for my washing. I walked for nearly an hour before I found a wide stretch of water and a sandy beach with boulders scattered about. I put my bundle down, untied it, and put the clothes in. The water was clear, but not swift-running. The linen did not float too far or too quickly away from my hands. I tucked my sari up above my knees and stood in the river, scrubbing the clothes against a large flat stone and using just a little of the washing powder my mother had given me. Good stuff, with a clean, sweet smell and much power in it. When I had finished, I carried the clothes beyond the beach and laid them on the grassy bank to dry in the sun. Just then I saw Collie, wife of our neighbor, coming towards me, and with her were two women I had not seen before. All carried bundles of washing on their heads, and two had children at their hips, and the third was expecting. They called out when they saw me, and I came down, a little shy, since they seemed to know each other so well. But before long I came to know them well too, these three women who lived nearest to us, and whose lives were so closely woven with mine. Collie, big and plump with ample hips and thrusting breasts, whose husband worked the field next to ours. Janaki, married to the village shopkeeper, with her homely face and sagging figure, for she had borne her husband several children. And Kunthi, youngest of the three, small and narrow, moving gracefully despite her burden. "It is her first," said Kali jovially, "but by no means her last, for as you see her husband has not wasted any time." She laughed loudly. Janaki frowned at her. "Chup, woman, do you not see these are young girls?" "And what of it? Are they not given in marriage? Kunthi is already bearing, and this newcomer, it will not be long. Men are all the same." I saw Kunthi shrug with a slight disdain. Janaki was quiet. Perhaps they both knew the futility of trying to restrain Kali. She, meanwhile, was addressing herself to me. "You are Rukmani, are you not? Wife of the farmer Nathan? The whole village has been curious about you. Heaven knows why. One woman is like another. The fuss your husband made! Why, for weeks he was as brittle as bamboo before it burst into flame. He built your hut with his own hands. Yes, he would not even have my husband to help." "Built it?" I said. "I did not know. He did not tell me." "Oh, yes, every bit of it himself, and neglecting the land sometimes to do it, so that Savaji had often to chide him, although he is a good man for a zemindari agent. He had made our home himself, and I had felt only fear to live in it. About a month later, when we were no longer strangers, I told him of what I had learned. "You built this for us," I said to him. "Why did you not tell me?" "Who has been talking to you?" he asked, not answering my question. "Kali. She told me a long time ago when I first went to where the brook widens near the river." "She is an old chatterbox and should have her mouth stitched." "For what? I am glad she told me. Should I not be proud that you have built this house with your own hands?" He considered. "You are not a child any more," he said at last. "You have grown fast since the day we were married, and that not so long ago. While the sun shines on you, and the fields are green and beautiful to the eye, and your husband sees beauty in you, which no one has seen before, and you have a good store of grain laid away for hard times, a roof over you, and a sweet stirring in your body, what more can a woman ask for?" My heart sang, and my feet were light as I went about my work, getting up at sunrise and going to sleep content. Peace and quiet were ours. How well I recall it, how grateful I am that not all the clamor which invaded our lives later could subdue the memory or still the longing for it. Rather, it has strengthened it. Had there not been what has been, I might never have known how blessed we were. True, my husband did not own the land he tilled, as my father had done, yet the possibility was there that he might one day do so. We owned our own plowing bullocks. We kept a milch goat. From each harvest we saved and had gunny sacks full of the husked rice stored away in our small stone-lined granary. There was food in plenty for two people, and we ate well. Rice for morning and evening meals, dal, sometimes a coconut, grated fine and cooked in milk and sugar, sometimes a wheat cake, fried in butter and melting in the mouth. Once or twice a week I would go to the village to buy sugar, ghee, and vegetables, calling on the way home at Durgan the milkman's to get curds, for our goat was running dry, and there was not always enough milk to make my own. I liked going to the village and meeting the people, for they were a friendly lot, and most of them anxious to help if they could. I got to know them all very quickly. Old Granny, who lived on what she made by selling peanuts and guavas. Hanuman, the general merchant. Parimal, husband of Janaki, who kept the only shop. And Biswas, the moneylender. Sometimes Janaki or Kali would come to see how I was getting on, but not often, for they were kept busy looking after husband and children. As for Kunti, very soon she was unable to do anything for herself, for she was a thin, slight girl, and we had to go in turns to buy her provisions and to help her with the work in the home. Kunti was different from the other women, quieter, more reserved, and for all that we tried to be at ease with her, there was a barrier which we could not surmount. Especially high against me it stood, strange and forbidding. Although why this should be, I could not think, finally putting it down to my imagination. She had, everybody said, married beneath her. Perhaps they said that of me too, but I was plain and she was pretty, so it didn't make sense in her case. For myself, I am glad I married beneath me, for a finer man no one could have had, but possibly she was not so lucky. A man is indeed fortunate if he does not marry above him, for if he does, he gets a wife who is no help to him whatsoever, only an ornament. I know, for I was ignorant of the simplest things, and no ornament either. Kali and Janaki between them had to show me how to milk the goat, how to plant seed, how to churn butter from milk, and how to hull rice. What patience indeed my husband must have had to put up with me uncomplainingly during those early days of our married lives. Not one cross word or impatient look, and praise for whatever small success I achieved. I had planted in the flat patch of ground behind the hut a few pumpkin seeds. The soil here was rich, never having yielded before, and loose, so that it did not require much digging. The seeds sprouted quickly, sending up delicate green shoots that I kept carefully watered, going several times to the well nearby for the purpose. Soon they were not delicate, but sprawling vigorously over the earth, and pumpkins began to form, which, fattening on soil and sun and water, swelled daily larger and larger, and ripened to yellow and red, until at last they were ready to eat, and I cut one and took it in. When Nathan saw it, he was full of admiration, and made much of this one fruit, he who was used to harvesting a field at a time. "One would have thought you have never seen a pumpkin before," I said, though pleased with him and myself, keeping my eyes down. "Not from our land," said Nathan. "Therefore it is precious, and you, Ruku, are indeed a clever woman." I tried not to show my pride. I tried to be offhand. I put the pumpkin away, but pleasure was making my pulse beat. The blood, unbidden, came hot and surging to my face. After that, 10 times more zealous, I planted beans and sweet potatoes, brinjals and chilies, and they all grew well under my hand, so that we ate even better than we had done before. Chapter 2. Kunti's child was born a few months before mine, a fine boy who nearly took his mother's life in exchange for his own. Janaki was ill, it could not come. Kali was away, therefore I had to do what I could. Kunti's husband went off to fetch the midwife, leaving me with the sweating girl. When she saw who I was, not at once, for she was half dazed with pain, Kunti cried out that she did not want me. "You must go," she kept entreating. "Why?" I said. "Do you dislike me so much, then?" "No, no, but please go. I do not want you here." "I cannot and will not. Besides, there is no one else. I shall be all right. The midwife will be here soon." "And what will your husband say," I said, "if I leave you here alone?" And I took no more notice of her cries. When she saw I would not go, she grew still and lay like a log, not a murmur from her, but the sweat forcing itself up in oily drops on her throat and temples. Kunti was lying in an exhausted sleep with her baby beside her before I went home. It was a whole day since I had left. Nathan was waiting for me, and he said crossly, "You look like a corpse. Whatever possessed you to stay so long?" Blame the midwife, I said. She could not be found. Or blame Kunti's son. He took a long time. I was tired, and my voice was on edge. Well, so long as you don't forget you are pregnant, he said shortly, and turned away. It was the first time I had seen him angry. Tears came pricking at my eyeballs. I sat down to stop my head from spinning, and after a while the pain went. He means well, I thought. He is anxious about our child. Better that he should worry than that he should not. From then on, I began to take more care of myself, leaving more and more of the work to Nathan. Sowing time was at hand, and there was plenty to be done in the fields. Dams of clay to be built to ensure proper irrigation of the paddy terraces, the previous year's stubble to be lifted, rushes and weeds to be destroyed, then the transplanting. All this meant stooping, and Nathan would not hear of it. With the leisure I now had, I took up writing again. It was my father who taught me to read and write. People said he did it because he wanted his children to be one cut above the rest. Perhaps so, but I am certain that he also knew that it would be a solace to me in affliction, a joy amid tranquillity. So he taught his 6 children, myself the youngest by 10 years, with the patience he brought to all things. Practice hard, he would say, watching me busy with slate and pencil. For who knows what dowry there will be for you when you are ready? And I, with only the thistledown of childish care upon me, would listen lightly and take up my pencil again. What use, my mother said, that a girl should be learned? Much good will it do her when she has lusty sons and a husband to look after. Look at me. Am I any worse that I cannot spell my name, so long as I know it? Is not my house clean and sweet? Are not my children well fed and cared for? My father laughed and said, Indeed they are, and did not pursue the matter, nor did he give up his teaching. When my child is ready, I thought now, I will teach him too, and I practiced harder than ever, lest my fingers should lose their skill. When Janaki recovered from her sickness, came to see me, she marveled that I could write. But Kali, who had come too, was scornful of the strange symbols which had no meaning for her, and dismissed it as a foible of pregnancy. You will forget all about such nonsense when your child is born, she said. Besides, there will be others and your hands will be full. Look at me. Do I have one spare minute to myself? How is it then, I asked, forgetting myself, that you are here now? Yes, and I have seen you in the village too, if you have so much to occupy you. As for my children, it is for them that I practice writing and reading, so that I can teach them when the time is ripe. Kali sniffed, but she was good-natured and did not take offense. Nathan used to come and sit beside me when I was writing. The first time he came to see what I was up to, he sat in silence with his brows drawn together and meeting. But after some watching, he went away, and when he came back, his face was clear. It is well, he said, stroking my hair. You are clever, Uruku, as I have said before. I think it cost him a good deal to say what he did, and he never varied his attitude once. That was typical of my husband. When he had worked things out for himself, he would follow his conclusions at whatever cost to himself. I am sure it could not have been easy for him to see his wife more learned than he himself was, for Nathan, alas, could not even write his name. Yet not once did he assert his rights and forbid me my pleasure, as lesser men might have done. Now that I did not work in the fields, I spent most of my time tending my small garden, the beans, the brinjals, the chilies, and the pumpkin vine, which had been the first to grow under my hand. And their growth to me was constant wonder, from the time the seed split and the first green shoots broke through, to the time when the young buds and fruit began to form. I was young and fanciful then, and it seemed to me not that they grew as I did, unconsciously, but that each of the dry, hard pellets I held in my palm had within it the very secret of life itself, curled tightly within, under leaf after protective leaf for safe keeping, fragile, vanishing with the first touch or sight. With each tender seedling that unfurled its small green leaf to my eager gaze, my excitement would rise and mount, winged, wondrous. "You will get used to it," Nathan said. "After many sowings and harvestings, you will not notice these things." There have been many sowings and harvestings, but the wonder has not departed. I was tying the bean tendrils to the wire fence I had built when I saw a quiver in the leaves of the pumpkins. The fruit is ripening, I thought. The birds are already here. Or perhaps mice. Leaving the beans, I went to look, stooping to part the leaves with my hand. Why did not the snake strike at once? Was the cobra surprised into stillness that a human should dare to touch it? My hands recoiled from the coldness of serpent flesh. My nails clawed at my palms. The leaves I had parted moved back to cover it. For a moment, my legs remained stiffly planted beside the pumpkins. Then the blood came racing to my limbs again, and I ran from the spot, screeching with fear and not looking behind me. Nathan came rushing to me, almost knocking me over, caught and shook me. "What is it? What is it?" he shouted roughly. "A snake," I whispered, bereft of voice and breath. "A cobra. I touched it." He looked at me as if I were mad. "Go in and stay there," he said. I wanted only to fall at his feet in my terror, to beg him not to leave me alone, but he was staring at me unrelenting. At last I went, cowed, but with the waters of panic receding. The snake had not stirred, Nathan said as he came back. He had cut it to pieces with his scythe and buried the remains so that I should not be upset. "Yet you have lived long enough to learn to disregard them," he said. "Are they not found everywhere? Tree snakes, water snakes, and land snakes? You only need to be careful, and they pass you by." "True," I said, shamefaced, yet rallying. "But it is one thing to see a snake, and another to touch it. I have never touched one before." "Nor again," Nathan said, grinning. "I have never seen you fly as fast as you did, child and all." I lowered my eyes, abashed. I was getting very awkward in my movements. I realized I must have looked like a water buffalo running in such a frenzy. "Never mind," said Nathan gently. "It will soon be over now." He was right. Whether from fright or the running, my baby was born a few days later. A month too soon, but healthy for all that. Collie came as soon as she knew, and the midwife some hours later, but in good time to deliver the child. They placed it in my arms when I had recovered a little from the birth, in silence. I uncovered the small form, beautiful, strong, but quite plain, a girl's body. I turned away, and despite myself the tears came, tears of weakness and disappointment. For what woman wants a girl for her firstborn? They took the child from me. Collie said, "Never mind, there will be many later on. You have plenty of time." It is so easy to be comforting when your own wishes have come true. Collie had 3 sons already. She could afford to sympathize. When I recall all the help Collie gave me with my first child, I am ashamed that I ever had such thoughts. My only excuse is that thoughts come of their own accord, although afterwards we can chase them away. As I had done for Kunthi, so Collie did for me, but much more. Sweeping and cleaning, washing and cooking. She even took pains to water the garden, and one morning I saw her tending the pumpkin vine, which was overladen with blossom. In that moment, a cold horror came on me again. My hands grew clammy, and I could feel once more the serpent's touch. I shrieked at her then, and she came running, her face frightened at the wildness in my voice. "Whatever is wrong?" she gasped, running to my side. The baby had awakened and was crying loudly, so that she had to yell. I was so pleased to see her whole. I could not speak for relief. At last I told her shakily about the cobra, and rather ashamed by now of making such a fuss, I exaggerated a little, making the snake enormous of its kind, and the danger more deadly than it had been. Women can sometimes be more soothing than men, so now Collie. "Poor thing," she said. "No wonder you are terrified. Anyone would be. But it is a pity your husband killed the snake, since cobras are sacred." She is a fool, Nathan said contemptuously when I told him. What would she have me do? Worship it while it dug its fangs in my wife? Go now, forget it. I think I did, although once or twice, when I saw the thickness of the pumpkin vines, I wondered nervously what might lie concealed there, and then I would take up knife and shovel to clear away the tangle. But when I drew near and saw the broad, glossy leaves and curling green tendrils, I could not bring myself to do it, and now I am glad I did not, for that same vine yielded to me richly pumpkin after pumpkin of a size and color that I never saw elsewhere. We called our daughter Irrawaddy, after one of the great rivers of Asia, for of all things water was most precious to us. But it was too long a name for the tiny little thing she was, and soon she became Ira. Nathan at first paid scant attention to her. He had wanted a son to continue his line and walk beside him on the land, not a puling infant who would take with her a dowry and leave nothing but a memory behind. But soon she stopped being a puling infant, and when at the age of 10 months she called him Appa, which means father, he began to take a lively interest in her. She was a fair child, lovely and dimpled, with soft, gleaming hair. I do not know where she got her looks, not from me, nor from Nathan, but there it was, and not only we but other people noticed and remarked on it. I myself did not know how I could have produced so beautiful a child, and I was proud of her and glad, even when people pretended to disbelieve that I could be her mother. Here is a marvel indeed, they would say, and make comparisons with ordinary parents, who sometimes bore a child of matchless brilliance, or with a devout couple who had brought forth a wretch. I prefer to think the plain have their rewards, and this was mine. She is like you, Nathan would say to me as he surveyed her, but he was the only one who thought so. Before long she was crawling all over the place, following her father into the fields, trailing me as I went about my work, and very soon she began to walk. You must not allow it so early, Collie said to me ominously, or her legs will bend like hoops. And at first I listened to her, and whenever I saw Ira trying to stand up or walk, I would rush forward and pick her up. But soon there was no stopping her. I should have been at it the whole time otherwise, and I had other things to do. Sowing time was at hand, and I was out all day with Nathan planting the paddy in the drained fields. Corn had to be sown too. The land was ready. My husband plowed it, steadying the plow behind the 2 bullocks, while I came behind, strewing the seed to either side and sprinkling the earth over from the basket at my hip. When that was done, it was time for our hut to be thatched. It had stood up well to sun and wind, but after the monsoon rains, several small patches showed wear, and it was as well to get things done in good time. Nathan cut fronds from the coconut palm that grew by our hut and dried them for me. Together we twisted the fiber and bound the palms, shaping them to the roof and strengthening the whole with clay. Ira was no trouble at all. She would sit happily, playing by herself in the sun, chuckling at the birds or at anything else she could see, including her fond parents. Or, if it was hot and she grew fretful, I would hang a cloth from a branch and put her in it, and she would go to sleep without any further bother. My mother especially grew very fond of her and came to see us often, although it meant traveling several hours in a bullock cart, which is very tiring when one is no longer young. Sometimes I would go to see my parents, but seldom, since there was so much to be done in my own home. And my mother, knowing this, did not reproach me for the long intervals between my visits. Chapter 3. Do not worry, they said. You will be putting lines in your face. They still say it, but the lines are already there, and they are silent about that. Kali said it, and I knew she was thinking of her own brood. Kunti said it, and in her eyes lay the knowledge of her own children. Janaki said morosely, she wished it could happen to her. A child each year was no fun. Only Nathan did not say it to me, for he was worried too and knew better. We did not talk about it. It was always with us, a chill fear that Ira was to be our only child. My mother, whenever I paid her a visit, would make me accompany her to a temple, and together we would pray and pray before the deity, imploring for help until we were giddy. But the gods have other things to do. They cannot attend to the pleas of every suppliant who dares to raise his cares to heaven. And so the years rolled by, and still we had only one child, and that a daughter. When Ira was nearing 6, my mother was afflicted with consumption, and was soon so feeble that she could not rise from her bed. Yet in the midst of her pain, she could still think of me, and one day she beckoned me near and placed in my hand a small stone lingam, symbol of fertility. "Wear it," she said. "You will yet bear many sons. I see them, and what the dying see will come to pass. Be assured, this is no illusion." "Rest easy," I said. "You will recover." She did not. No one expected she would, but she lingered for a long time. In her last months, my father sent for the new doctor who had settled in the village. Nobody knew where he came from or who paid him, but there he was, and people spoke well of him, though he was a foreigner. As for my father, he would have called in the devil himself to spare my mother any suffering. So it was in a house of sorrow that I first met Kennington, whom people called Kenny. He was tall and gaunt, with a pale skin and sunken eyes the color of a kingfisher's wing, neither blue nor green. I had never seen a white man so close before, and so I looked my fill. "When you have done with staring," he said coldly, "perhaps you will take me to your mother." I started, for I had not realized I was goggling at him. Startled, too, that he should have spoken in our tongue. I will show you," I said, stumbling in my confusion. My mother knew no man could save her, and she did not expect miracles. Between her and this man, young though he was, lay mutual understanding and respect, one for the other. He told her no lies, and she trusted him. He came often, sometimes even when he was not summoned, and his presence, as much as the powders and pills he made her take, gave my mother her ease. When she died, it was in the same way, without a struggle, so that although we grieved for her, our hearts were not torn by her suffering. Before I left for my village, I told him that for what he had done, there could be no repayment. "Remember only," I said, "that my home is yours, and all in it." He thanked me gravely, and as I turned to go, he raised a hand to stop me. "There is a look about you," he said. "It lies in your eyes, and the mark is on your face. What is it?" "Would you not grieve too," I said, "if the woman who gave you birth was no more than a handful of dust?" "It is not that alone. The hurt is of longer standing. Why do you lie?" I looked up, and his eyes were on me. Surely, I thought, my mother has told him, for he knows. But as if he guessed my thoughts, he shook his head. "No, I do not know. Tell me." I held back. He was a foreigner, and although I no longer stood in awe of him, still the secret had been long locked up in my breast, and would not come out easily. "I have no sons," I said at last heavily. "Only one child, a girl." Once I had started, the words flowed. I could not stop myself. "Why should it be?" I cried. "What have we done that we must be punished? Am I not clean and healthy? Have I not borne a girl so fair? People turn to gaze when she passes." "That does not seem to help you much," he said shortly. I waited. If he wishes to help me, he can, I thought. So much faith had I in him. My heart was thumping out a prayer. "Come and see me," he said at last. "It is possible I am able to do something. Remember, I do not promise." My fears came crowding upon me again. I had never been to this kind of doctor. He suddenly became terrifying. "You are an ignorant fool," he said roughly. "I will not harm you." I slunk away, frightened of I know not what. I placed even more faith in the charm my mother had given me, wearing it constantly between my breasts. Nothing happened. At last, I went again to him, begging him to do what he could. He did not even remind me of the past. Ira was 7 when my first son was born, and she took a great interest in the newcomer. Poor child. It must have been lonely for her all those years. Kali's and Janaki's children were much older, and as for Kunthi, she preferred to keep aloof. Her son was a sturdy youngster and would have been a good playmate for my child, but as the years went by, her visits to our house grew less and less frequent, until at last we were meeting as strangers. My husband was overjoyed at the arrival of a son. Not less so my father. He came, an old man, all those miles by cart from our village, to hold his grandson. Your mother would have been glad, he said. She was always praying for you. She knew, I told him. She said I would have many sons. As for Nathan, nothing would do but that the whole village should know, as if they didn't already. On the 10th day from the birth, he invited everybody to feast and rejoice with us in our good fortune. Kali and Janaki both came to help me prepare the food, and even Kunthi's reserve crumbled a little as she held up my son to show him to our visitors. Between us, we prepared mounds of rice, tinting it with saffron and frying it in butter, made hot curries from chilies and dal, mixed sweet, spicy dishes of jaggery and fruit, broiled fish, roasted nuts over the fire, filled 10 gourds with coconut milk, and cut plantain leaves on which to serve the food. When all was ready, we spread the leaves under the gaudy marriage pandal Nathan had borrowed for the occasion, and ate and drank for long, merry hours. Afterwards, Kunthi was persuaded to play for us on her bulbul tara, which she did skillfully, plucking at the strings with her slender fingers, and singing in a low, clear voice, which people strained to hear, so that it was very quiet. The baby, who had slept through all the clamor, woke up now in the sudden hush, and began squalling. Kunthi stopped her thrumming. People crowded around me trying to pat the baby, who had caused all this excitement, although he was no beauty, with puckered face and mouth open wide to emit shriek after shriek. Such a furor, Kali said. One would think the child had wings at the very least. 7 years we have waited, said Nathan, his eyes glinting. Wings or no wings. The one person I had wanted most to see at our feast was not there. I had gone to seek him, but he was not to be found. He goes and comes, they told me. Nobody knows where or why. So I had to be content without him. But contentment cannot be forced, and Nathan noticed my preoccupation. What now, he said. Are you not happy? Would you have the moon too, as Kali would have wings? Indeed, no, I said. It is just that I would have liked to see Kenny under our roof. He did so much for my mother. And for us, I thought, but could not say it, for at the beginning I had not wished my husband to know that I was putting myself in the hands of a foreigner, for I knew not what his reaction would be. I had consoled myself that it would be time enough to tell him if a child was born, and now I found I could not do it, because he would surely ask why I had not told him before. What harm, I thought, if he does not know? I have not lied to him. There has just been this silence. In our sort of family, it is as well to be the firstborn. What resources there are have later to be shared out in smaller and smaller portions. Ira had been fed well on milk and butter and rice. Arjun, too, for he was the first boy. But for those who came after, there was less and less. 4 more sons I bore in as many years. Thambi, Murugan, Raja, and Selvin. It was as if all the pent-up desires of my childless days were now bearing fruit. I was very fortunate, for they were without exception healthy, and in their infancy and childhood, my daughter looked after them almost as much as I did. She was a great one for babies, handling them better than many a grown woman while she was still a child. How quickly children grow! They are infants. You look away a minute, and in that time they have left their babyhood behind. Our little girl ran about in the sun bare and beautiful as she grew, with no clothes to hamper her limbs or confine her movements, Then one day when she was 5, long before Arjun was born, Nathan pointed her out to me as she played in the fields. "Cover her," he said. "It is time." I wanted to cry out that she was a baby still, but of course Nathan was right. She had left infancy forever. And so I made a skirt for her, weaving bright colors into the white cotton that she might like it, and so she did for a time, wearing it gladly, twirling it about her as she spun round and round. But when the novelty had worn off, she became fractious and wanted to tear it from her. It was nearly a month before she resigned herself to it. With 6 children to feed, we could no longer afford to eat all the vegetables we grew. Once a week, I would cut and pack our garden produce, selecting the best and leaving the spoiled or bruised vegetables for ourselves, cover the basket with leaves, and set off for the village. Old Granny was always glad to buy from me, and at first I would make straight for the corner of the street where she sat with her gunny sack spread before her. The old lady would pick out the purple brinjals and yellow pumpkins, the shiny green and red chilies, feeling them with her wrinkled fingers and complimenting me on their size. "None like yours," she would say. "Such color, such a bloom on them." Perhaps she said it to everyone who came to her, but I would feel absurdly pleased and go away with my insides smiling. Then one day, Biswas, the moneylender, stopped me in the street. I would have passed after a brief salutation, for among us there is a dislike of the money-lending class. But he stood squarely in my path. "Ah, Rukmani," he said, "in a hurry as usual, I see." "My children are not of age to be left alone for long," I said, speaking civilly. "Yet surely you have time for a little business with me?" "If you will tell me what business." "Buying and selling," he said, cackling. "Which is your business, as lending is mine." "If you will make yourself clear," I said, "I will stay in here. Otherwise, I must be on my way." "Those vegetables," he said, "that old Granny buys from you, what price does she pay you?" "A fair price," I said, "and no haggling." "I will pay you 4 annas a dozen for brinjals, and 6 annas each for pumpkins, if they are large." He was offering almost double what old Granny paid. I went away. The following week, I sold almost my whole basket to him, keeping only a little for old Granny. I did not like selling to him, although he paid me a better price. It was business and nothing else with him. Never a word of chaff or a smile, or perhaps it was the flattery I missed. And I would much rather have had it the other way. But there you are. You cannot choose. To my surprise, old Granny made no comment beyond smiling reassuringly when I muttered guiltily that our needs at home were growing. In the beginning, she may not have known, but when I sold her week after week, 1 small pumpkin or half a dozen brinjals, she must have guessed the truth. But she said nothing, nor did I, for we both knew she could not pay me more, and I could not afford to sell for less. As it was, we were going short of many things. We no longer had milk in the house except for the youngest child. Curds and butter were beyond our means except on rare occasions. But we never went hungry as some of the families were doing. We grew our own plantains and coconuts. The harvests were good, and there was always food in the house. At least a bag full of rice, a little dal, if no more. Then when the rice terraces were drained, there was the fish, spawned among the paddy, and what we could not eat, we dried and salted away. And every month I put away a rupee or 2 against the time Ira would be married, so we still could not grumble. Chapter 4. Change I had known before, and it had been gradual. My father had been headman once, a person of consequence in our village. I had lived to see him relinquish this importance, but the alteration was so slow that we hardly knew when it came. I had seen both my parents sink into old age and death, and here too there was no violence, but the change that now came into my life, into all our lives, blasting its way into our village, seemed wrought in the twinkling of an eye. Arjun came running to us with the news. He had run all the way from the village, and we had to wait while he gulped in fresh air. "Hundreds of men," he gasped. "They are pulling down houses around the maiden, and there is a long line of bullock carts carrying bricks." The other children clustered around him, their eyes popping. Arjun swelled with importance. "I am going back," he announced. "There is a lot to be seen." Nathan looked up from the grain he was measuring into the gunny bag for storing. "It is the new tannery they are building," he said. "I have heard rumors." Arjun, torn between a desire to dash back and craving to hear more from his father, teetered anxiously to and fro on his heels, but Nathan said no more. He put the grain away carefully in the granary, then he rose. "Come," he said, "we will see." All the families were out. The news had spread quickly. Kali and her husband, Kunti and her boys, Janaki, surrounded by her numerous family. Even old Granny had come out to see. Children were everywhere, dodging in and out of the crowd and crying out to each other in shrill, excited voices. Startled pie dogs added to the din. We formed a circle about the first arrivals, some 50 men or so, who were unloading bricks from the bullock carts. They spoke in our language, but with an intonation which made it difficult for us to understand them. "Townspeople," Kali whispered to me. "They say they have traveled more than 100 miles to get here." She was prone to exaggerate, and also believed whatever was told her. In charge of the men was an overseer who looked and spoke like the men, but who was dressed in a shirt and trousers, and he had a hat on his head such as I had only seen Kenny wear before, a topi the color of thatch. The others wore loincloths and turbans, and a few wore shirts, but as the day wore on, they doffed their shirts one by one until all were as our men. The men worked well and quickly, with many a sidelong glance at us. They seemed to enjoy having created such a stir and lured such a big audience. As for the overseer, he made much play of his authority, directing them with loud voice and many gestures, but not doing a stroke of work himself. Still, it must have been hot for him standing there waving his arms about, for the shirt he wore was sticking to his back, and now and then he would lift his hat as if to allow the wind to cool his scalp. Until at last there was a commotion about the edges of the circle, of which we were the inner ring. The crowd was parting, and as the movement spread to us, we gave way too, to let a tall white man through. He had on a white topi and was accompanied by 3 or 4 men dressed like him in shorts. The overseer now came forward, bowing and scraping, and the red-faced one spoke to him rapidly, but so low we could not hear what he was saying. The overseer listened respectfully, and then began telling us to go, not to disturb the men, although for so long he had been glad of many watchers. In our maiden, in our village, he stood, telling us to go. "As if he owned us," muttered Kanin the Chakli. I think that already he foresaw his livelihood being wrested from him, for he salted and tanned his own skins, making them into chaplis for those in the village who wore them. So he stood his ground, glaring at the overseer and refusing to move, as did a few others who resented the haughty orders that poured from the man's lips. But most of us went, having our own concerns to mind. Every day for 2 months the line of bullock carts came in, laden with bricks and stones and cement, sheets of tin and corrugated iron, coils of rope and hemp. The kilns in the neighboring villages were kept busy firing the bricks, but their output was insufficient, and the carts had to go further afield, returning dusty and brick-filled. Day and night women twisted rope, since they could sell as much as they made, and traders waxed prosperous selling their goods to the workmen. They were very well paid, these men, some of them earning 2 rupees in a single day, whereas even in good times we seldom earned as much. And they bought lavishly, rice and vegetables and dal, sweetmeats and fruit. Around the maiden they built their huts, for there was no other place for them, and into these brought their wives and children, making a community of their own. At night we saw their fires, and by day we heard their noise, Loud, ceaseless clangor and din, chatter, sometimes a chanting, to help them get a heavy beam into position or hoist a load of tin sheeting to the roof. Then one day, the building was completed. The workers departed, taking with them their goods and chattels, leaving only the empty huts behind. There was a silence. In the unwonted quiet, we all wondered apprehensively what would happen next. A week went by, and another. Losing our awe, we entered the building, poking into its holes and corners, looking into the great vats and drums that had been installed. Then curiosity slacked. We set about our old tasks on the land and in our homes. There were some among the traders, those who had put up their prices and made their money, who regretted their going. Not I. They had invaded our village with clatter and din, had taken from us the maiden where our children played, and had made the bazaar prices too high for us. I was not sorry to see them go. They will be back, said Nathan, my husband, or others will take their place. And did you not benefit from their stay, selling your pumpkins and plantains for better prices than you did before? Yes, said I, for I had. But what could I buy with the money with prices so high everywhere? No sugar or dal or ghee have we tasted since they came, and should have had none so long as they remained. Nevertheless, said Nathan, they will be back. For you may be sure they did not take so much trouble only to leave a shell in our midst. Therefore, it is as well to accept these things. Never, never, I cried. They may live in our midst, but I can never accept them, for they lay their hands upon us, and we are all turned from tilling to barter, and hoard our silver since we cannot spend it, and see our children go without the food that their children gorge. And it is only in the hope that one day things will be as they were that we have done these things. Now that they have gone, let us forget them and return to our ways. Foolish woman, Nathan said, there is no going back. Bend like the grass that you do not break. Our children had not seen us so serious, so vehement before. 3 of my sons huddled together in a corner staring at us with wide eyes. 2 youngest lay asleep, one in Ira's arms, the other leaning heavily against her, and she herself sagged against the wall with their weight as she sat there on the floor. There was a look on her lovely soft face that pierced me. Ah, well, I said, disassembling, perhaps I exaggerate. If they return, we shall have a fine dowry for our daughter, and that is indeed a good thing. The lost look went from Ira's face. She was a child still, despite the ripeness of her 13 years, and no doubt fancied a grand wedding even as I had done. They came back, not the same men who went, but others, and not all at once, but slowly. The red-faced white man came back with a foreman and took charge of everything. He did not live in the village, but came and went while his men took over the huts that had lain empty, the ones who came last settling beside the river, bringing their wives and children with them, or dotting the maiden even more thickly with the huts they built for themselves and their families. I went back to my home, thankful that a fair distance still lay between them and us, that although the smell of their brews and liquors hung permanently in the sickened air, still their noise came to us from afar. You are a queer being, Kunti said, her brows flaring away from her eyes. Are you not glad that our village is no longer a clump of huts but a small town? Soon there will be shops and tea stalls and even a bioscope, such as I have been to before I was married. You will see. No doubt I will, I said. It will not gladden me. Already my children hold their noses when they go by, and all is shouting and disturbance and crowds wherever you go. Even the birds have forgotten to sing, or else their calls are lost to us. You are a village girl, said Kunti, and there were shadows of contempt moving behind her eyes. You do not understand. If I was a village girl, Kali and Janaki were too, and had no taste for the intruders. But after a while, Janaki confessed that at least she now knew what to do with her sons, for the land could not take them all. And as for Kali, well, She had always been fond of an audience for her stories. So they were reconciled and threw the past away with both hands, that they might be the readier to grasp the present, while I stood by in pain, envying such easy reconciliation, and clutching in my own two hands the memory of the past, and accounting it a treasure. I think the end of my daughter's carefree days began with the tannery. She had been used to come and go with her brothers, and they went whither they wished. Then one day, with many a meaningful wink, Collie told us that it was time we looked to our daughter. "She is maturing fast," she said. "Do you not see the eyes of the young men lighting on her? If you are not careful, you will not find it easy to get her a husband." "My daughter is no wanton," Nathan replied. "Not only men, but women look at her, for she is beautiful." "She is that," Collie said handsomely. "Therefore, look to her even more closely." There was no subduing Collie, as I well knew. Therefore, although we did not admit it to each other, we were more careful of Ira. Poor child! She was bewildered by the many injunctions we laid upon her, and the curtailing of her freedom tried her sorely, though not a word of complaint came from her. Chapter 5. In all the years of our tenancy, we never saw the Zemindar who owned our land. Savaji acted for him, and being a kindly, humane man, we counted ourselves lucky. Unlike some, he did not extract payment in kind to the last grain. He allowed us to keep the gleanings. He did not demand from us bribes of food or money, nor did he claim for himself the dung from the fields, which he might easily have done, stipulating only that Collie and I should gather our share on different days to avoid arguments. This way, we get fairly equal quantities, and there was no bad blood between us. One morning, so early that the dew still jeweled the grass, and the clamor of the tannery had not yet begun, I went out on my errand. It was as well to go out early, otherwise you could never tell how much had already been taken by urchins, for dung was easy to sell and commanded a good price. Several times before, I had seen boys on the land, and had chased them from it, but without succeeding in getting a hold of their loot. That morning there were a lot of pickings. I soon filled the small basket I had with me. As I bent down for the last handful, I became aware that someone was watching me. It was Kenny, thinner than when I had last seen him, but how could I ever forget him? Leaving my basket, I ran to him, dirty hands and all, with a glad, welcoming heart. "My lord, my benefactor," I cried. "Many a time I have longed to see you. Now at last you've come." And I bent down to kiss his feet, shod as they were in leather shoes. He withdrew them quickly and told me to get up. "I am not a benefactor," he said, "nor a lord. What ails you?" "You are my benefactor," I said stoutly. "Have I not 5 sons to prove it?" "Am I to blame for your excesses?" he said, grinning, but his eyes were alight with laughter, no doubt at my crestfallen face. "Come with me," I said, recovering myself. "You shall see them, excesses or not." "For a few minutes only. I am busy," he replied. And as I picked up my basket, he peered in. "I see you collect dung and take it with you. Is it not for the land?" "Indeed, no. Dung is too useful in our homes to be given to the land, for it is fuel for us and protection against damp and heat, and even ants and mice. Did you not know?" "Too well," he answered shortly. "I have seen your women forever making dung cakes and burning them and smearing their huts. Yet I thought you would know better, who live by the land, yet think of taking from it without giving." "What substitute, then?" I said quietly. He made no reply, but came after me. All the children were awake, waiting for their morning meal of rice water. Nathan was working in the fields, and I sent one of the boys to call him in. For Kenny, I spread a mat, and he sat down while we grouped ourselves about him. But I could see he was not accustomed to sitting cross-legged on the floor, for his knees, instead of resting on the mat, sprang up aslant like the horns of a bull. and I was uncomfortable for him, and distressed that I had nothing else to offer. Ira strained the rice water into wooden bowls for us. The rice itself we kept for our midday meal, but to one bowl she added a handful of the cooked rice and a little salt, which we could not afford for ourselves, and this she handed to Kenny, stooping low and keeping her eyes down. "My daughter, Irawati," I said, proud that she should know her duties to a guest. Kenny took the bowl from her with a smile. "You are a good cook for one so young," he said, laying his hand for a moment on her head. She did not raise her eyes, but her face kindled, and I was pleased, too, that he should notice my child. He spoke to each of the others in turn, until Munnigan, my third son, came bouncing in, leading his father by the hand. "You have heard me tell of Kenny often enough," I said. "This is he, friend to my father's house." "So much," I said, and left the other unsaid. My husband made namaskar. "I have," he replied formally, "and I am happy that he should honor our poor household by his presence." "Yet not so poor," the other replied politely, "for the women of your house do you credit, and you have begotten 5 healthy sons." My heart quailed at his words for fear he should betray me, yet no betrayal, since how could he guess my husband did not know I had gone to him for treatment? Why had I, stupidest of women, not told him? I waited, gnawing my lip, but he said no more. Kenny came often to our house thereafter. Of himself he did not speak, of wife or children or parents or home. I held my tongue, for I felt to ask would be to offend him. Yet he had a love for children. Mine were always eager to see him, making great fuss of him when he came, and he, for his part, would suffer them patiently, often bringing with him half a coconut, or lodgies made of nuts and rolled into balls with jaggery, which the children loved. Once he came when I was suckling Selvin, my youngest son, who had turned 3, and saw that my breasts were sore where the child's mouth had been. "The boy is long past weaning," he said, frowning. "Why do you force it?" "We had to sell our goat," I said. "I can no longer afford to buy milk, but while my son is young and needs it, I will give it to him." Thereafter, he brought me a little cow's milk when he could, or sent it with one of the children from the village, who were always glad to help him, for he had a way of attracting children. There was ever a troop following him about. As before, he came and went mysteriously. I knew little beyond the fact that he worked among the people of the tannery, treating and healing their bodies during long hours, and then going to his lone dwelling. But when he left the village for days or years at a time, nobody knew where he went or what he did, and when he returned, he was more taciturn than ever, and none dared ask. Chapter 6. I kept Ira as long as I could, but when she was past 14, her marriage could be delayed no longer, for it is well known with what speed eligible young men are snapped up. As it was, most girls of her age were already married, or at least betrothed. The choice of go-between was not easy to make. Collie was the nearest to hand, and the obvious one, but she was garrulous and self-opinionated. Rejection of the young man she selected would involve a tedious squabble. Besides, she had sons of her own, and might well consider them suitable husbands, which I certainly could not, for they owned no land. Old Granny, on the other hand, would be the ideal go-between. She was old and experienced, knew very well what to look for, and never lacked patience. But for some years now, I had not traded with her, and she might, with every justification, refuse to act for me. But in the end, it was to her I went. "A dowry of 100 rupees," I said. "A maiden like a flower. Do your best for me, and I shall ever be in your debt. This I ask you," I said, looking straight at her. "Although Biswas takes my produce, and for you there has been nothing." "I bear you no grudge, Rukmani," she replied. "Times are hard, and we must do what we can for ourselves and our children. I will do my best." Thereafter, never a week went by but she brought news of this boy or that, and she and I and Nathan spent long hours trying to assess their relative merits. At last we found one who seemed to fulfill our requirements. He was young and well-favored, the only son of his father, from whom he would one day inherit a good portion of land. "They will expect a large dowry," I said regretfully. 100 rupees will not win such a husband. We have no more." "She is endowed with beauty," old Granny said. "It will make up for a small dowry in this case." She was right. Within a month the preliminaries were completed. The day was fixed. Ira accepted our choice with her usual docility. If she fretted at the thought of leaving us and her brothers, she showed no sign. Only once she asked a little wistfully how frequently I would be able to visit her, and although I knew such trips would have to be very rare, since her future home lay some 10 villages away, I assured her not a year would pass without my going to see her 2 or 3 times. "Besides, you will not want me so often," I said. "This home, your brothers, are all you have known so far, but when you have your own home and your own children, you will not miss these." She nodded slightly, making no comment, yet I knew how bruised she must be by the imminent parting. My spirit ached with pity for her. I longed to be able to comfort her, to convince her that in a few months' time her new home would be the most significant part of her life, the rest only a preparation. But before this joy must come the stress of parting, the loneliness of beginning a new life among strangers, the strain of the early days of marriage, and because I knew this, the words would not come. Wedding day. Women from the village came to assist. Janaki, Kali, many I hardly knew. We went with Ira to the river, and when she was freshly bathed, put on her the red sari I had worn at my own wedding. Its rich, heavy folds made her look more slender than she was, made her look like a child. I darkened her eyes with kohl, and the years fell away more. She was so pitifully young, I could hardly believe she was to be married today. The bridegroom arrived, his parents, his relatives, our friends, the priests. The drummer arrived and squatted outside, awaiting permission to begin. The fiddler joined him. There should have been other musicians, a flautist, a harmonium player, but we could not afford these. Nathan would have nothing we could not pay for. No debts, he insisted, no debts. But I grudged Ira nothing. Had I not saved from the day of her birth so that she should marry well? Now I brought out the stores I had put by month after month. Rice and dal and ghee, jars of oil, betel leaf, areca nuts, chewing tobacco, and copra. "I didn't know you had so much," said Nathan in amazement. "And if you had, there would be little enough," I said with a wink at the women. "For men are like children and must grab what they see." I did not wait for his retort, hearing only the laughter that greeted his sally, but went out to speak to the drummer. Arjun, my eldest son, was sitting next to the man, cautiously tapping the drum with 3 fingers, as he had been shown. "There is plenty of food inside," I said to him. "Go and eat while there is still some left." "I can eat no more," he replied. "I have been feasting all day." Nevertheless, he had made provision for the morrow. I saw in his lap a bundle bulging with food. Sugar syrup and butter had soaked through the cloth patchily. "Join your brothers," I said, hoisting him up. "The drummer is going to be busy." He ran off, clinging tightly to his bundle. The wedding music began. Bride and groom were sitting uneasily side by side. Ira stiff in the heavy embroidered sari, white flowers in her hair, very pale. They did not look at each other. About them were packed some 14 or 15 people. The hut could hold no more. The remainder sat outside on palm leaves the boys had collected. "What a good match," everybody said. "Such a fine boy, such a beautiful girl. Too good to be true. It was indeed. Old Granny went about beaming. It was she who had brought the two parties together. Her reputation as a matchmaker would be higher than ever. We, none of us, could look into the future. So they were married. As the light faded, two youths appeared, bearing a palanquin for the newly married couple, lowered it at the entrance to the hut for them to step into. Now that it was time to go, Ira looked scared. She hesitated a little before entering, but already a dozen willing hands had lifted her in. The crowd, full of good feeling, replete with food, and drunk with the music, vicariously excited, pressed round, eagerly thrusting over their heads garland after garland of flowers. The earth was spattered with petals. In the midst of the crush, Nathan and I, Nathan holding out his hands to Ira in blessing, she with dark head bent low to receive it. Then the palanquin was lifted up, the torch-bearers closed in, the musicians took their places. We followed on foot behind, relatives, friends, well-wishers, and hangers-on. Several children had added themselves to the company. They came after, jigging about in high glee, noisy and excited, a long, ragged tail end to the procession. Past the fields, through the winding streets of the village we went, the bobbing palanquin ahead of us, until we came at last to where, at a decorous distance, the bullock cart waited to take them away. Then it was all over. The bustle, the laughter, the noise. The wedding guests departed. The throng melted. After a while, we walked back together to our hut. Our sons, tired out, were humped together asleep, the youngest clutching a sugary confection in one sticky fist. Bits of food lay everywhere. I swept the floor clean and strewn it with leaves. The walls showed cracks, and clods of mud had fallen where people had bumped against them, but these I left for patching in the morning. The used plantain leaves I stacked in one heap. They would do for the bullocks. The stars were pale in the graying night before I lay down beside my husband, not to sleep, but to think. For the first time since her birth, Ira no longer slept under our roof. Chapter 7. Nature is like a wild animal that you have trained to work for you. So long as you are vigilant and walk warily with thought and care, so long will it give you its aid. But look away for an instant. Be heedless or forgetful, and it has you by the throat. Ira had been given in marriage in the month of June, which is the propitious season for weddings, and what with the preparing for it, and the listlessness that took hold of me in the first days after her departure, nothing was done to make our hut weatherproof, or to secure the land from flooding. That year, the monsoon broke early with an evil intensity, such as none could remember before. It rained so hard, so long, and so incessantly that the thought of a period of no rain provoked a mild wonder. It was as if nothing had ever been but rain, and the water pitilessly found every hole in the thatched roof to come in, dripping onto the already damp floor. If we had not built on high ground, the very walls would have melted in that moisture. I brought out as many pots and pans as I had, and we laid them about to catch the drips. But soon there were more leaks than we had vessels. Fortunately, I had laid in a stock of firewood for Ira's wedding, and the few sticks that remained served at least to cook our rice. And while the fire burnt, hissing at the water in the wood, we huddled round trying to get dry. At first the children were cheerful enough. They had not known such things before, and the lakes and rivulets that formed outside gave them endless delight. But Nathan and I watched with heavy hearts, while the waters rose and rose, and the tender green of the paddy field sank under and was lost. "It is a bad season," Nathan said somberly. "The rains have destroyed much of our work. There will be little eating done this year." At his words, Arjun broke into doleful sobs, and his brother Thambi followed suit. They were old enough to understand, but the others, who weren't, burst into tears too, for by now they were cramped and out of humor with sitting crouched on the damp floor, and hungry since there was little to eat, for most of the food had gone to make the wedding feast, and the new season's harvesting lay outside, ungathered and rotting. I hushed them as best I could, throwing a reproachful glance at my husband for his careless words, but he was unnoticing, sunk in hatred and helplessness. As night came on, the 8th night of the monsoon, the winds increased, whining and howling around our hut, as if seeking to pluck it from the earth. Indoors it was dark. The wick, burning in its shallow saucer of oil, threw only a dim, wavering light. But outside the land glimmered, sometimes pale and sometimes vivid, in the flicker of lightning. Towards midnight, the storm was at its worst. Lightning kept clawing at the sky almost continuously. Thunder shook the earth. I shivered as I looked, for I could not sleep, and even a prayer came with difficulty. "It cannot last," Nathan said. "The storm will abate by the morning." Even as he spoke, a streak of lightning threw itself down at the earth. There was a tremendous clap of thunder, and when I uncovered my shrinking eyes, I saw that our coconut palm had been struck. That, too, the storm had claimed for its own. In the morning, everything was calm. Even the rain had stopped. After the fury of the night before, an unnatural stillness lay on the land. I went out to see if anything could be saved of the vegetables, but the shoots and vines were battered and broken, torn from their supports and bruised. They did not show much sign of surviving. The cornfield was lost. Our paddy field lay beneath a placid lake on which the children were already sailing bits of wood. Many of our neighbors fared much worse than we had. Several were homeless, and of a group of men who sheltered under a tree when the storm began, 6 had been killed by lightning. Collie's hut had been completely destroyed in the last final fury of the storm. The roof had been blown away bodily, the mud walls had crumbled. "At least it stood until the worst was over," said Collie to me, "and by God's grace we were all spared." She looked worn out. In the many years I had known her, I had never seen her so deflated. She had come to ask for some palm leaves to thatch the new hut her husband was building, but I could only point to the blackened tree, its head bitten off and hanging by a few fibers from the withered stump. "We must thatch our roof before the night," I said. "The rains may come again. We need rice, too." Nathan nodded. "We may be able to buy palm leaves in the village. Also, rice." He went to the granary in a corner of which the small cloth bundle of our savings lay buried. It had been heavy once, when we were newly married. Now the faded rag in which it was tied was too big, and the ends flapped loosely over the knot. Nathan untied it and counted out 12 rupees. "One will be enough," I said. "Let us go." "I will take 2. We can always put it back." In the village, the storm had left disaster and desolation worse than on our own doorstep. Uprooted trees sprawled their branches in ghastly fashion over streets and houses, flattening them and the bodies of men and women indiscriminately. Sticks and stones lay scattered wildly in angry confusion. The tannery stood. Its bricks and cement had held it together despite the raging winds. But the workers' huts of more flimsy construction had been demolished. The thatch had been ripped from some. Where others stood, there was now only a heap of mud with their owners' possessions studding them in a kind of pitiless decoration. The corrugated iron shacks in which some of the men lived were no more. Here and there we could see the iron sheets in unexpected places, suspended from treetops or blown and embedded onto the walls of houses still left standing. There was water everywhere. The gutters were overflowing into the streets. Dead dogs, cats, and rats cluttered the roadside, or floated starkly on the waters with blown, distended bellies. People were moving about amid this destruction, picking out a rag here, a bundle there, hugging those things that they thought to be theirs, moving haltingly and with kind of a despair about them. People we knew came and spoke to us in low voices, gesturing hopelessly. "Let us go," I said. "It is no good. We will come back later." We turned back, the 2 rupees unspent. Our children came running out to meet us, their faces bright with hope. "The shops are closed or destroyed," I said. "Go inside. I will get you some gruel presently." Their faces faded. The 2 younger ones began crying listlessly from hunger and disappointment. I had no words to comfort them. At dusk, the drums of calamity began. Their grave, throbbing rhythm came clearly through the night. Throughout the night, each beat, each tattoo, echoing the mighty impotence of our human endeavor. I listened. I could not sleep. In the sound of the drums, I understood a vast, pervading doom. But in the expectant silences between, my own disaster loomed larger, more consequent, and more hurtful. We ventured out again when the waters had subsided a little, taking with us, as before, 2 rupees. This time things were somewhat better. The streets were clear. Huts were going up everywhere. My spirits rose. "To Hanuman first for rice," said Nathan, excited. "The gruel we have been swallowing has been almost plain water these last few days." I quickened my steps. My stomach began heaving at the thought of food. Hanuman was standing in the doorway of his shop. He shook his head when he saw us. "You have come for rice," he said. "They all come for rice. I have none to sell, only enough for my wife and children." "And yet you are a merchant who deals in rice?" "And what if so? Are you not growers of it? Why then do you come to me? If I have rice, I do not choose to sell it now. But I have told you, I have none." "We ask for only a little. We will pay for what we have. See, here is the money." "No, no rice, but wait. They say Biswas is selling. You could try." "To Biswas." "We come for rice. Look, here is our money." 2 rupees? How much do you think you can buy with 2 rupees? "We thought—" "Never mind what you thought. Is this not a time of scarcity? Can you buy rice anywhere else? Am I not entitled to charge more for that? 2 alaks I will let you have, and that is charity." "It is very little for 2 rupees. "Take it or leave it. I can get double that sum from the tanners, but because I know you—" We take it, we give up the silver coins. Now there is nothing left for the thatching, unless we use a rupee or 2 from the 10 that remain in the granary. I put the rice in my sari, tuck the precious load securely in at the waist. We turn back. On the outskirts of the village, there is Kenny. His face is grim and long. His eyes are burning in his pallid face. He sees us and comes up. "You too are starving, I suppose." I tap the roll at my waist. The grains give at my touch. "We have a little rice. It will last us until times are better." "Times are better? Times are better," he shouts. "Times will not be better for many months. Meanwhile, you will suffer and die, you meek, suffering fools. Why do you keep this ghastly silence? Why do you not demand? Cry out for help. Do something. There is nothing in this country. Oh, God, there is nothing." We shrink from his violence. What can we do? What can he mean? The man is raving. We go on our way. The paddy was completely destroyed. There would be no rice until the next harvesting. Meanwhile, we lived on what remained of our salted fish, roots, and leaves, the fruit of the prickly pear, and on the plantains from our tree. At last, the time came for the rice terraces to be drained and get ready for the next sowing. Nathan told me of it with cheer in his voice, and I told the children, pleasurably, for the fields were full of fish that would feed us for many a day. Then we waited, spirits lifting, eyes sparkling, bellies painful with anticipation. At last the day. Nathan went to break the dams, and I with him, and with me our children, sunken-eyed, noisy, as they had not been for many days at the thought of the feast, carrying nets and baskets. First one hole, then another, no bigger than a finger's width, until the water eroded the sides and the outlets grew large enough for 2 fists to go through. Against them we held our nets, feet firm, and braced in the mud while the water rushed away, and the fish came tumbling into them. When the water was all gone, there they were, caught in the meshes and among the paddy, shoals of them, leaping madly, wet and silver, and good to look upon. We gathered them with flying fingers and greedy hearts, and bore them away in triumph, with a glow at least as bright as the sun on those shining scales. Then we came and gathered up what remained of the paddy, and took it away to thresh and winnow. Late that night we were still at work, cleaning the fish, hulling the rice, separating the grain from the husk. When we had done, the rice yield was meager, no more than 2 measures, all that was left of the year's harvest and the year's labor. We ate, finding it difficult to believe we did so. The good food lay rich, if uneasy, in our starved bellies. Already the children were looking better, and at the sight of their faces, still pinched but content, a great weight lifted from me. Today we would eat, and tomorrow, and for many weeks while the grain lasted. Then there was the fish, cleaned, dried, and salted away. And before that was gone, we should earn some more money. I would plant more vegetables. Such dreams, delightful, orderly, satisfying, but of the stuff of dreams, wraith-like. And sleep, such sleep, deep and sweet and sound, as I had not known for many nights. It claimed me, even as I sat amid the rice husks and fish scales and drying salt. Chapter 8. Kunthi's 2 eldest sons were among the first in the village to start work at the tannery, and between them they brought home more than a man's wages. "You see," said Kunthi, "the tannery is a boon to us. Have I not said so since it began? We are no longer a village either, but a growing town. Does it not do you good just to think of it?" "Indeed, no," I said. "It's even as I said, and our money buys less and less. As for living in a town, if town this is, why, there is nothing I would fly from sooner if I could go back to the sweet quiet of village life. Now it is all noise and crowds everywhere, and rude young hooligans idling in the street, and dirty bazaars and uncouth behavior, and no man thinks of another but schemes only for his money." "Words and words," said Kunthi. "Stupid words. No wonder they call us senseless peasant women. But I am not, and never will be. There is no earth in my breeding." "If there were, you would be better for it," said I wrathfully, "for then your values would be true." Kunthi only shrugged her delicate shoulders and left us. She spent a lot of her time making unnecessary journeys into the town, where, with her good looks and provocative body, she could be sure of admiration, and more, from the young men. At first the women said it, and the men said they were jealous. Then men too began to notice and remark on it, and wonder why her husband did nothing. "Now if I were in his place," they said. But they had ordinary wives, not a woman with fire and beauty in her, and the skill to use them. Besides which, he was a quiet, dull man. "Let her be," said Janaki. "She is a trollop, and is anxious only that there should be a supply of men." Her voice held both anger and a bitter hopelessness. For a long time now her husband's shop had been doing badly. He was unable to compete with the other bigger shopkeepers, whom the easy money to be had from the tanners had drawn to the new town. A few days after our conversation, the shop finally closed down. Nobody asked, "Where do you go from here?" They did not say, "What is to become of us?" We waited, and one day they came to bid us farewell, carrying their possessions, with their children trailing behind, all but the eldest, whom the tannery had claimed. Then they were gone, and the shopkeepers were glad that there was less competition, and the worker who moved into their hut was pleased to have a roof over his head, and we remembered them for a while, and then took up our lives again. It was a great sprawling growth, this tannery. It grew and flourished and spread. Not a month went by, but somebody's land was swallowed up. Another building appeared. Night and day the tanning went on. A never-ending line of carts brought the raw material in. Thousands of skins, goat, calf, lizard, and snake skins, and took them away again, tanned, dyed, and finished. It seemed impossible that markets could be found for such quantities, or that so many animals existed. But so it was, incredibly. The officials of the tannery had increased as well. Apart from the white man we had first seen, who owned the tannery and lived by himself, there were some 9 or 10 Muslims under him. They formed a little colony of their own, living midway between the town and open country, in brick cottages with whitewashed walls and red-tiled roofs. The men worked hard, some of them until late at night. The women, well, they were a queer lot, and their way of life was quite different from ours. What they did in their houses I do not know, for they employed servants to do the work, but they stayed mostly indoors, or if they went out at all, they went veiled in burqas. It was their religion, I was told. They would not appear before any man but their husband. Sometimes, when I caught sight of a figure in voluminous draperies swishing through the streets under a blazing sun, or of a face peering through a window or shutter, I felt desperately sorry for them, deprived of the ordinary pleasures of knowing warm sun and cool breeze upon their flesh, of walking out light and free, or of mixing with men and working beside them. They have their compensations, Collie said dryly. It is an easy life with no worry for the next meal and plenty always at hand. I would gladly wear a burqa and walk veiled for the rest of my life, if I too could be sure of such things. For a year, perhaps, I said, not forever. Who could endure such a filtering of sunlight and fresh air as they do? You chatter like a pair of monkeys, said Collie's husband, with less sense. What use to talk of exchange and so forth? Their life is theirs and yours is yours. Neither change nor exchange is possible. Once and once only, I actually saw one of those women close. I was taking a few vegetables to market when I saw her beckoning me to come indoors. I did so, and as soon as the door was closed, the woman threw off her veil the better to select what she wanted. Her face was very pale, the bones small and fine. Her eyes were pale, too, a curious light brown matching her silky hair. She took what she wanted and paid me. Her fingers, fair and slender, were laden with jeweled rings, any one of which would have fed us for a year. She smiled at me as I went out, then quickly lowered the veil again about her face. I never went there again. There was something about those closed doors and shuttered windows that struck coldly at me, used as I was to open fields and the sky and the unfettered sight of the sun. Chapter 9. One morning I was pounding some red chilies into powder. Ka-chup went the pestle into the mortar, crushing the brittle chilies and the seeds in them. Each time it fell, a fine red dust rose up, spreading a rich, acrid smell in the air. A pleasant smell, hot and pungent, which made my nostrils water and squirted the tears into my eyes, so that every few minutes I had to stop to wipe them. It was a fine, peaceful morning. Not a sound from the tannery, which for one blessed day in the week closed down completely. Each time I paused, I could hear sparrows twittering and the thin, clear note of a mynah. Into view on the horizon came 2 figures, moving very slowly. I went on with my pounding. The figures grew larger every time I looked up, and then, when they were still a fair distance away, I recognized my daughter. I had seen her only once since her marriage, and since then over a year had passed. Excited, I gathered up the chili powder and put it away, rinsed my eyes, washed my face, and came out. On the doorstep, I traced out a kolim, a pattern in white rice flour, to welcome them. They approached slowly, as if their feet were somehow weighted, not with the lightness which should have brought them quickly to my side. Something is wrong, I thought. Young people should not walk thus. And when I saw their faces, the words of welcome I had ready died unuttered. In silence, Ira knelt at my feet. I raised her up quietly with hammering heart. "Let us go in," I said. "You must be tired." Ira entered obediently. Her husband stood stiffly outside. "Come," I said again. "Sit and rest for a while. You have traveled a long way." "Mother-in-law," he said, "I intend no discourtesy, but this is no ordinary visit. You gave me your daughter in marriage. I have brought her back to you. She is a barren woman." "You have not been married long," I said with dry lips. "She may be as I was. She may yet conceive." "I have waited 5 years," he replied. "She has not borne in her first blooming. Who can say she will conceive later? I need sons." I summoned Nathan from the fields. The tale was repeated. Our son-in-law departed. "I do not blame him," Nathan said. "He is justified. For a man needs children. He has been patient." "Not patient enough," I said. "Not patient like you, beloved." Ira was sitting with her face in her arms. She looked up as her father and I came in, and her mouth moved a little, loosely, as if she had no control over her lips. She was lovely still, but strain and hopelessness had shadowed her eyes and lined her forehead. She seemed almost to back away as I went to her. "Leave me alone, Mother. I have seen this coming for a long time. The reality is much easier to bear than the imaginings. At least now there is no more fear, no more necessity for lies and concealment." "There should never have been," I said. "Are we not your parents? Did you think we would blame you for what is not your fault?" "There are others," she replied. "Neighbors, women, and I a failure, a woman who cannot even bear a child." All this I had gone through, the torment, the anxiety. Now the whole dreadful story was repeating itself, and it was my daughter this time. "Hush," I said. "We are all in God's hands, and He is merciful." My thoughts went to Kenny. He can help, I thought. Surely he can do something. My crushed spirit revived a little. About this time, Arjun was in his early teens. He was tall for his age, and older than his years. I had taught him the little I knew of reading and writing. Now he could have taught me and most other people in the town. I do not know how he did it, for we could not afford to send him to school or to buy him books. Yet he always had a book or two by him, about which he grew vague if I asked questions, and spent many hours writing on scraps of paper he collected, or even, when he had none, on the bare earth. Secretly, I was glad, for I saw my father in him, although sometimes my husband worried that he showed no inclination for the land. But when one day he told me he was going to work in the tannery, I was acutely dismayed. It seemed it was going to be neither the one nor the other, neither land nor letters which was to claim him. "You are young," I attempted to dissuade him. "Besides, you are not the caste of tanners. What will our relations say?" "I do not know," he said. "I do not care. The important thing is to eat." How heartless are the young! One would have thought from his words we had purposely starved him, when in fact of what there was he always got the biggest share after my husband. "So," I said, "we do not do enough for you? These are fine words from an eldest son. They do not make good hearing." "You do everything you can," he said. "It is not enough. I am tired of hunger, and I am tired of seeing my brothers hungry. There is never enough, especially since Ira came to live with us." "You would grudge your own sister a mouthful?" I cried. "Who eats half what I give her so that you boys can have the more?" "The more reason for me to earn," rejoined Arjun. "I do not grudge food to her or to you. I am only concerned that there is so little." He was right, of course. The harvests have been very poor. Shop prices were higher than ever. "Well," I said, "go if you must. You speak like a man, although you are a child still. But I do not know whether you can obtain work at the tannery. People say they have all the labor they want." "Kunthi's son will help me," he replied. "He has promised." I did not want to be indebted to Kunthi or to her son. She was so different from us, sly and secretive, with a faintly contemptuous air about her, which in her son was turned almost to insolence. He had inherited her looks, too, and the knowledge of it lay in his bold eyes. A handsome, swaggering youth, not for my son. "There is no need to go through him," I said, with determination. "I will ask Kenny to help you. White men have power." "Indeed they have," he said bitterly, "over men and events, and especially over women." "What do you mean?" I said to him. "Speak with a plain tongue or not at all." He looked at me obliquely with darkening eyes, but would say no more. A few days later he began working at the tannery, and before long Thambi, my second son, had joined him. The two of them had been very close to each other from their earliest years, and it was not strange that Thambi should follow his brother. Nathan and I both tried to dissuade him, but without avail. My husband especially had been looking forward to the day when they would join him in working on the land, but Thambi only shook his head. "If it were your land or mine," he said, "I would work with you gladly, but what profit to labor for another and get so little in return? Far better to turn away from such injustice." Nathan said not a word. There was a crushed look about him which spoke of the deep hurt he had suffered, more than any words could have done. He had always wanted to own his own land. Through the years there had been the hope, growing fainter with each year, each child, that one day he would be able to call a small portion of land his own. Now even his sons knew it would never be. Like his brother before him, Thambi had found the cruelest words of any. Yet they were good sons, considerate of us, patient with others, always giving us a fair share of their earnings. With their money, we began once again to live well. In the granary, unused for so long, I stored away half a bag of rice, 2 measures of dal, and nearly a pound of chilies. Hitherto, almost all we grew had been sold to pay the rent of the land. Now we were enabled to keep some of our own produce. I was especially pleased that I had not been forced to sell all the chilies, for these are useful to us. When the tongue rebels against plain boiled rice, desiring ghee and salt and spices which one cannot afford, the sharp bite of a chili renders even plain rice palatable. I was able at last to thatch our hut again, substantially, with 2 or 3 bindings of leaves. For the first time in years, I bought clothes for the older children, a sari for myself, and although he protested, I bought for my husband a dhoti, which he badly needed, since the other was in rags and barely covered his loins. Both he and I had the garments we had worn at our daughter's marriage, but these we never thought of wearing. Whatever hardships our day-to-day living might have, we were determined not to disgrace our sons on the day of their weddings. "I do not blame him," Nathan said. "He is justified, for a man needs children. He has been patient." Chapter 10. Deepavali, the Festival of Lights, approached. It is a festival mainly for the children, but of course everyone who can takes part. I twisted cotton into wicks, soaked them in oil, and placed them in mud saucers, ready to be lit at night. To the children, I handed out 2 annas apiece to be spent on fireworks. I had never been able to do so before. In previous years, we had contented ourselves with watching other people's fireworks, or with going down to the bonfire in the village, and even now I felt qualms about wasting money on such quickly spent pleasures. But their rapturous faces overcame my misgivings. It is only once, I thought, a memory. As it grew dark, we lit the tapers and wicks and encircled our dwelling with light. A feathery breeze was stirring, setting the flames leaping and dancing, their reflections in the black glistening oil cavorting too. In the town and in the houses nearby, hundreds of small beacons were beginning to flash. Now and then a rocket would tear into the sky, break, and pour out its riches like precious jewels into the darkness. As the night went on, the crackle and spit of exploding fireworks increased. The children had bought boxes of colored matches and strings of pathas and a few pice worth of crackers. like small nuts, which split in two with a loud bang amid a shower of sparks when lit. The last were the most popular. The boys pranced round, shrieking with laughter and throwing the crackers about everywhere, yet they were nimble enough to skip out of harm's way. All except Seldom, the youngest. He stood a safe distance away, legs apart, and obviously ready to run, holding a stick of sugar cane nearly as tall as himself, which he had bought instead of fireworks. "Go and play," I said to him. "Deepavali comes but once a year, and this is the first time we have bought fireworks. Do not lose the opportunity." "I am afraid," he said frankly, his small face serious. After we had eaten, and rather well, and there were no crackers left, and the oil in the saucers had run dry, we walked to the town. Selvin refused to come. He was a stubborn child. I knew it was useless to try to persuade him. Ira stayed behind too, saying she preferred to stay with him. I think she was glad of the excuse he provided, for since her return she had not cared to be seen about, and of course there would be a large crowd in the town. Villagers from all round, like us, were converging towards the bonfire to be lit there. Already smoke wisps were curling towards the clouds. Torches were beginning to flare. The smell of oil was everywhere, heavy and pungent, exciting the senses. Our steps quickened, quicker and quicker, greedy, wanting to encompass everything, to miss not one iota of pleasure. Then, as happens even in the brightest moment, I remembered Janaki. Last year she had come with us, she and her children. This year, who knew or cared? The black thought momentarily doused the glow within me. Then, angered and indignant, I thrust the intruder away, chasing it, banishing it, tired of gloom, reaching desperately for perfection of delight, which can surely never be. There was a great noise everywhere. Men, women, and children from the tannery and the fields had come out, many of them in new clothes, such as we too had donned. The girls and women with flowers in their hair, and glass bangles at their wrists, and silver rings on their toes, and those who could afford it wore silver gulsa clasped around their ankles and studded belts around their waists. In the center of the town, the bonfire was beginning to smolder. For many weeks the children had been collecting firewood, rags, leaves, and brushwood, and the result was a huge pile, like an enormous anthill, into which the flames ate fiercely, hissing and crackling and rearing up as they fed on the bits of camphor and oil-soaked rags that people threw in. In the throng I lost Nathan and the boys, or perhaps they lost me. At any rate, we got separated. I pushed my way through the crush, this way and that, nobody giving an inch in my efforts to find them, and in the end I had to give up. Before long, in the heat and the excitement, I forgot them. Drums had begun to beat. The fire was blazing fiercely, great long orange tongues consuming the fuel and thrusting upwards and sometimes outwards, as if to engulf the watchers. As each searching flame licked around, the crowd leaned away from its grasp, straightening as the wind and the flames changed direction, so that there was a constant swaying movement, like the waving of river grasses. The heat was intense. Faces gleamed ruddy in the firelight. One or two women had drawn their saris across their eyes. Leaping, roaring to climax, then the strength taken from fury, a quietening. Slowly, one by one, the flames gave up their color and dropped, until at last there were none left. Only a glowing heap, ashen-edged. The drum beats died to a murmur. The scent of jasmine flowers mingled with the fumes of camphor and oil, and a new smell, that of toddy, which several of the men had been drinking, many to excess, for they were lurching about loud-mouthed and more than ordinarily merry. I looked about for my family, and at last saw my husband. He seemed to have gone mad. He had one son seated on his shoulders, and one son at each hip, and was bounding about on the fringes of the crowd to the peril of my children and the amusement of the people. I fought my way to him. "Have you taken leave of your senses?" I cried out above the din. "No, only my cares," he shouted gaily, capering about with the children clinging delightedly to him. "Do you not feel joy in the air?" He sounded so light of heart, I could not help smiling. I feel nothing, I said, going up to him. Perhaps it is the toddy that makes the feeling. Not a drop, he said, coming up to me. Smell. You are too tall. I cannot, I replied. Lift her up, somebody yelled, and a dozen voices repeated the cry. Lift her up! Lift her up! My husband looked at me solemnly. I will, he said, and dropping his sons, he seized me and swung me high up in front of all those people. Several of the women were laughing at him indulgently. The children were twittering with pleasure. Whatever will they say? I said, my face burning as he let me down again. At our age, too. You ought to be ashamed. That I am not, he said, winking to the vast delight of the onlookers. I am happy because life is good and the children are good and you are the best of all. What more could I say after that? Nathan sang loudly all the way back. He was in high spirits. The children, tired out, clumped along in silence, the youngest with frequent pleas to be carried, and when we took no notice, he began snuffling. It was a very hot night. Selvin and Ira were sleeping out in the open, in the small square in front of our hut, which I had swept and washed with dung that morning. The others stretched themselves out and were asleep almost as they lay down. Nathan had lost none of his good humor. He seemed very wide awake. I stretched myself out beside him, close to him in the darkness, and as we touched, he turned abruptly towards me. Words died away. The listening air was very still. The black night waited. In the straining darkness, I felt his body moving with desire. His hands on me were trembling, and I felt my senses opening like a flower to his urgency. I closed my eyes and waited in the darkness, while my being filled with a wild, ecstatic fluttering, waited for him to come to me. Chapter 11. One of my husband's male relatives had died, and he had to attend the funeral. When he had gone, I took the opportunity of going to see Kenny. I had not done so before, because I was sure Nathan would not like his wife or his daughter going to a white man, a foreigner. My father had been different, but Nathan, I felt, would not approve. And if he did not, the one chance Ira had would be lost, and this made it the more important that he should not know. I explained this to Ira cautiously, and she nodded listlessly and said yes. It was a necessary precaution, but she did not look at me, and she showed no enthusiasm. I was getting more and more worried about her. She moped about, dull of hair and eye, as if the sweetness of life had departed, as indeed it has for a woman who is abandoned by her husband. Kenny was working in the small building they had put up near the tannery. I could see him whenever the door opened to let someone out. There was a long line of men waiting. I squatted some distance away. The day wore on. The sun had set. The glow of twilight was touched with darkness before he came out. He looked grim and tired. His eyes were burning. There was an air of such impersonal cruelty about him. Despite myself, I shivered. No more tonight, he said briefly to the assembled men, and stepping down from the veranda, he strode away. I waited till the crowd dispersed, then I followed. He was walking quickly with long strides. I had to run to catch up. He stopped at last when he heard my footsteps and waited for me to come up, frowning so that I began to feel afraid. I said no more tonight. Did you not hear me? Do you think I am made of iron? I waited all day, I gasped. I must see you. My husband will be back soon, and then I cannot come. His frown deepened. He said coldly, You people will never learn. It is pitiful to see your foolishness. It is for my daughter I come, I said. She cannot bear. She is as I was. You will be a mother before she is, he replied with a glimmer of a smile, for it seems you have no difficulty. It is so, I said. I would it were otherwise, and she in my condition, for she is much afflicted since her husband has no use for her. Why did she not come then, he said, since it is her need? It would have been more sensible." There was an edge to his voice, and his mouth twisted as if in exasperation. "Forgive me," I whispered, quaking. "I was not sure." To my surprise, he put both hands on my shoulders, forcing me to look at him, and I saw he was laughing. "I am sorry I frightened you," he said. "You should not act like a timid calf at your age. As for your daughter, I will do what I can. But remember, no promises." He turned and was gone. I sat down to think and to collect my wits. When at last I rose to go, a full moon was shining, golden and enormous, very low in the sky. Bats went swooping silently by. I kept to the narrow footpath, clear and white in the moonlight, walking swiftly and absorbed in my thoughts. I heard no footsteps, only a voice calling my name from the shadows. I stopped, my heart hitting out wildly at my breast, and then I saw it was Kunthi standing where the path forked, with the moonlight streaming full down on her. "You startled me," I said. "I did not expect—" "That I can see," she said coolly, coming towards me. "You keep late hours, Rukmani." "No later than yours," I replied, not liking her tone. "I have my reasons." "Of course," she said softly, derision in her voice. "We all have reasons." "Mine are not the same as yours," I said with contempt, surveying her. She came very close, so close that I smelt the rose petals in her hair, saw the paint on her mouth. "Meaning?" "That we live differently. It is charitable to say no more. Let me pass." She stood squarely in my path. "I would not have thought it," she said slowly, "had I not seen for myself." "Thought what?" I said. "Seen what?" "That you have so much passion in your body," she said insolently, "that you seek assuagement thus. Your husband would give much to know where you have been tonight." I saw her mouth forming these words, her eyes half hooded and mocking. Then I saw her face suddenly close to mine, and did not realize I had thrown myself at her until I felt her body in my grip. An overwhelming rage possessed me. I kept shaking her furiously. I could not stop. Her slender body was no match for mine. I saw her head fall back. The thin sari she wore slipped from her shoulders. Then I saw that it was not tied at the waist, but below the navel, like a strumpet's, and that she was naked below. Sandalwood paste smeared her swelling hips. Under her breasts were dark painted shadows, which gave them sensuous depth. The nipples were tipped with red. I released her. She stood there before me, panting, with her hair shaken loose and coiling about her shoulders. "Guard your tongue," I said, "or it will be the worse for you." She said nothing for a moment while she rearranged her garments, recovering herself a little. Then once again that maddening, insulting half-smile curved her lips. "And for you," she said with knives in her voice, "and for your precious husband." With that, she was gone. I went alone to summon my daughter's husband. "Take her back," I said. "There is nothing wrong with her now. She will bear you many sons yet." "I would," he replied with a hint of sorrow in his eyes, "for she was a good wife to me, and a comely one. But I have waited long, and now I have taken another woman." I went away. Ira was waiting, eagerness shining from her. "You must not blame him," I said. "He has taken another woman." She said not a word. I repeated what I had said, for she seemed not to understand, but she only looked at me with stony eyes. Thereafter her ways became even more strange. She spent long hours out in the country by herself, spoke little, withdrew completely into herself, and went about her tasks with a chill hopelessness that daunted me. No one could see in her now the warm, lovely creature she had been, except sometimes when Selvin came to her, perching on her lap and coaxing a smile from her, for she always had a special love for him. As my pregnancy advanced, she turned completely away from me. Sometimes I saw her looking at me with brooding, resentful eyes, and despite myself, I could not help wonder if hatred lay behind her glance. Then at last my child was born, a nicely formed boy, smaller than the others had been, but of course I was older now. We nicknamed him Cootie, which means tiny, and being a happy, untroublesome baby, everybody took pleasure in his arrival. None more so than Ira. The transformation in her was astonishing, as it was inexplicable. I had feared she might dislike the child, but now it was as if he were her own. She lost her dreary air, her face became animated, the bloom of youth came back to her. "Our daughter is herself again," said Nathan to me. "I have heard her caroling like a bird." "She is happy with the child," I replied, "but I do not know what is to become of her in the future." "Always worrying," he chided. "It is not a mercy that she is young again. Should one not be grateful?" He was a man and did not understand. How could I stop worrying? We had no money to leave her. Who would look after her when we were gone and the boys were married with families of their own? With a dowry, it was perhaps possible she might marry again. Without it, no man would look at her, no longer a virgin and reputedly barren. No one had been more upset about the outcome of Ira's marriage than old Granny. It was she who had arranged the match, and though failing in health, she thought it her duty to come to me. She had aged considerably since the last time I had seen her. She walked slowly, pausing before each step to gather strength for the next. Her hands kept up a slight shuddering movement, like the nervous flutter of a bee on a flower. "No fault of yours or the girl's or her husband's," I told her. "It is fate. Nevertheless, I do not like to think of the future." "Why fear?" said the old lady. "Am I not alone, and do I not manage?" I thought of her sitting in the street all day long with a gunny sack in front of her, piled with a few honest worth of nuts and vegetables, and I thought of Ira doing the same thing, and I was silent. "It is not unbearable," said she, watching me with her shrewd eyes. "One gets used to it." It is true, one gets used to anything. I had got used to the noise and the smell of the tannery. They no longer affected me. I had seen the slow, calm beauty of our village wilt in the blast from the town, and I grieved no more. So now I accepted the future and Ira's lot in it, and thrust it from me. Only sometimes when I was weak, or in sleep while my will lay dormant, I found myself rebellious, protesting, rejecting, and no longer calm. Chapter 12. One day in each week, when the tannery stopped work, Arjun and Thambi would help their father on the land, and this gave Nathan great pleasure. He liked to see his sons beside him, to teach them the ways of the earth, how to sow, to transplant, to reap, to know the wholesome from the rotten, the unwelcome reed from the paddy, and how to irrigate or drain the terraces. In all these matters he had no master, and I think it helped him to know he could impart knowledge to his sons, more skilled though they were in other things, and able to read and write better than any in the town. The rest of the week they worked at the tannery, going there soon after daybreak, and not coming back until it was dark. By the time they had entered their late teens, they were earning good wages, a rupee for each day's work, and without fail they would hand me their earnings, keeping nothing back for gaming or whoring, as many of the lads did. Each morning I cooked rice for them, sometimes dal or vegetables as well, which they took with them to eat at midday, and when they came home, I gave them rice water and dried fish, sometimes a little buttermilk, or perhaps even a few plantains I had kept from selling. But from what they gave me, I had also to buy clothes for them, for they were expected to put on shirts over their loincloths, and red turbans on their heads, so that although we had full bellies and were well clothed, there was not much left over, and the hope I secretly cherished of putting some money for Ira soon withered, and when it finally died, I recovered my peace of mind and was happy enough. If there was nothing to be done in the fields, Nathan would accompany me when I went to market. This happened so seldom that it was always an occasion, and to round it off, we would go to the tannery to see our sons. They invariably came out at midday for their meal, and we would sit with them for a few minutes, talking while they ate their rice and enjoying the rest. Then one day, a bright, soft morning, with a whisper of rain in it, we got there to find the gates closed and guards posted along the iron railings that encircled the compound. Midday, mid-afternoon, still no sign of any workers. At last I pluck up courage to inquire of the guards. It needs courage, for they are in uniforms and have laces strapped to their wrists. The first one is surly. "Begone! I have no time for idle women." The next swings his laty jauntily. He does not know anything, he will not say. So to the next. He is a big, hefty fellow, and he looks down at me and says there has been trouble. The workers will not be out today. No, not even to eat. My knees turn to water. "What trouble?" I stammer. "Are my sons in it?" He shakes his head. He does not know. My husband is behind me. He supports me a little with his arm, and we go home and wait. At last they come, long after dusk, with the faces of angered men, though neither is yet 20. "What has happened?" we ask with trepidation. They are still our sons, but suddenly they have outgrown us. "Trouble," they say. "We asked for more money, and they took from us our eating time." I bring out some dried fish and rice cakes. They are ravenous. "More money," I say. "What for? Do they not pay you well already?" "What for?" one echoes. "Why, to eat our fill, and to marry, and for the sons we shall beget." And the other one says, "No, it is not enough." I do not know what reply to make. These men are strangers. Nathan says we do not understand. We must not interfere. He takes my hand and draws me away. To his sons he is gentle. Into the calm lake of our lives, the first stone has been tossed. Looking back now, I wonder how it came to pass that not until that fateful day did we realize the trouble that had been brewing. No gossip, not a whisper had come to us of the meetings the men had held, at which my sons had been spokesmen, nor of the agitation that followed, nor of the threats by the owners, there were now 4, of the tannery. All this we heard only later. Then one day they did not go to work. "We shall not go back until our demands are met," Dombey said. "All the workers have stopped. We do not ask for charity, but for that which is our due." "How can you force them?" I said. "Are they not the masters? For every one of you who is out, there are 3 waiting to step into your place." "We will see," he replied in a hard voice, and I dared say no more. When a whole week had passed thus, the tannery officials called a meeting to announce that those who did not return to work would be replaced. My sons came home from that meeting even more silent, if possible, than they had been in the past. This was the test, and it failed. The next morning, the tannery had its full complement again, most of them workers who had gone back, the remainder men who were only too glad to obtain employment. For so long, hope and the heat of battle had sustained Arjun and Thambi. Now there was only bitterness. "The people will never learn," Arjun said savagely. "They will rot before they do." People will never learn. Kenny had said it, and I had not understood. Now here were my own sons saying the same thing, and still I did not understand. What was it we had to learn? To fight against tremendous odds? What was the use? One only lost the little one had. Of what use to fight when the conclusion was known, I asked myself, and got no answer. I went to my husband, and he was perplexed twice over. Of course, ours was not the only family involved. There were several others, among them Collie's, and she came to bemoan the result. "2 more mouths to feed," she complained. "Only one of my 3 sons had the sense to go back. I do not know what is to become of us, for the land cannot sustain us all. So much for reading and writing," she said, accusing me with eye and finger. "Did I not say no good would come of it? Now look into what mess your sons have led us." "Aye, and out of it to better things," said Thambi with flint in his voice, "but for spawn like yours, who have sold themselves cheaper than dirt." "You will speak with respect," I cried, "or else—" Then Nathan interrupted so violently that I started. "Enough!" he shouted. "More than enough has been said. Our children must act as they choose to, not for our benefit. Is it not enough that they suffer?" The veins on his forehead were bulging. I had never seen him so angry before. Kali went away. Then the men went too, father and sons, leaving me alone, who had no understanding. Once more Nathan was sole provider for us, and we forgot the good living we had known. The reserves of grain I had put by began to dwindle, despite my care. Fortunately, harvest time was near, and I consoled myself with the thought of it. Arjun and Thambi began to frequent the town more and more, coming and going at all hours with no word as to what they did, and I suffered it in silence, for I knew they had no money to lead them to harm, and I had no cure for the restlessness that afflicted them. One morning I was laying out some clothes to dry in the sun, when Selvin came running in, his face hot and excited. "Tom-toms are beating," he announced breathlessly. "The town is full of drummers. They are calling for men." I stopped my work and gazed at him, and all at once my heart turned over. It was as if a scene long past were occurring again. This was not Selvin, but Arjun, and he was telling me not of drummers, but of bullock carts bringing the tannery to us brick by brick. I passed my hand over my eyes, feeling slightly giddy. "Come and see! Come quickly!" the boy was saying, eager and unnoticing. The others crowded round, and he repeated his story with relish. He had roused his brother's interest, and I was forgotten. When they had gone, a triumphant "sell them" in the van, and the place was quiet, I did indeed hear the drums, muffled and distant, insistently calling. Well, I thought, if it concerns me, I shall hear soon enough, and if not, I shall have saved myself a walk. So, with ordinary things, I sought to still my qualms. "They are calling for laborers," Arjun said, not looking up. "It would be a good opportunity for us." Only Arjun and Thambi, who had stayed in the town until nightfall, and my husband and I were up. The others were long asleep. "They are paying well," Arjun resumed. "It would be good for us to work again. It is not fitting that men should corrupt themselves in hunger and idleness." "I have heard," said Nathan, "that labor is required of you not here, but in the island of Ceylon." "Yes, it is work in the tea plantations of Ceylon." "You may not have the knowledge for such work." "They will teach us. They have said so." "Who will pay for the journey? Is it not one of many hundreds of miles?" "True. They will arrange everything, and everything will be paid for." So Nathan was silenced, for he saw they were men and had made their decisions. But how could I let them go who were my flesh and blood without a fight? "Promises," I said, "fair words. Who is to see if they are honored? What is to happen if they are broken?" "They need labor," Arjun said dryly. "Self-interest alone will keep these promises." "What is it that calls you?" I said. "Is it gold? Although we have none, remember that money is not everything." "It is an important part of living," he answered me patiently, "and work is another. There is nothing for us here, for we have neither the means to buy land nor to rent it. Would you have us wasting our youth chafing against things we cannot change?" "Indeed, no," I said, "but Ceylon is a distant land. Its people are not ours. How will you fare?" "No worse than here," they replied. "No worse than here." The wick was spluttering in the oil. There were only a few drops left in the coconut shell, but there was none to replenish it. We sat on in the darkness. Then at last I made one more effort. "If you go, you will never come back," I cried. "The journey costs hundreds of rupees. You will never have so much." The tears came, hot and bitter, flowing and flowing, as if the very springs of sorrow had been touched in my body. They spoke soothingly of how much they would earn, and how one day they would return, as one does to a child. And I listened to them, and it was all a sham, a poor, shabby pretense to mask our tortured feelings. They left at first daylight, each carrying a bundle with food in it, and each before he went kissed Nathan's feet, then mine, and we laid our hands on them in blessing. I knew we would never see them again. "They are growing up," Nathan said. "Would you have them forever at your breast?" "Ah, no," I said wearily. They must go their way, only it seems to me their way lies far from here. 2 sons have gone, now the third is going, and not to the land which is in his blood, but to be a servant. He has never been. What does he know of such work? He will learn, said Nathan. He is quick and has an agile brain. Should you not be thankful that he goes no further than 2 days' journeying, and that it is a good house that takes him? Kenny himself has assured you of that. You should be grateful that he has recommended our son. I am indeed, I said, flat and dispirited. He has done much for us. You brood too much, Nathan said, and think only of your trials, not of the joys that are still with us. Look at our land. Is it not beautiful? The fields are green and the grain is ripening. It will be a good harvest year. There will be plenty. He coaxed me out into the sunlight, and we sat down together on the brown earth that was part of us, and we gazed at the paddy fields spreading rich and green before us. And they were indeed beautiful. The air was cool and still, yet the paddy caught what little movement there was, leaning slightly one way and the next, with soft whispering. At one time there had been kingfishers here, flashing between the young shoots for our fish, and paddy birds, and sometimes, in the shallower reaches of the river, flamingos, striding with ungainly precision among the water reeds, with plumage of a glory not of this earth. Now birds came no more, for the tannery lay close, except crows and kites and such scavenging birds, eager for the town's offal, or sometimes a palpita, skimming past with raucous cry, but never stopping, perhaps dropping a blue-black feather in flight to delight the children. Nathan went and plucked a few green stems and brought them to me. See how firm and strong they are, no sign of disease at all, and look, the grain is already forming. I took the paddy from him and parted the grass, and there within its protective husk lay the rice grain, just big enough to see, white, perfect, and holding in itself our lives. It promises a good harvest, he repeated eagerly. We shall be able to pay the landlord and eat, and perhaps even put by a little. We may even make enough to visit our son. Would not that be good? Thus he sought to comfort me, and after a time I was with him, thinking pleasurably of harvesting and of plucking the pumpkins swelling on the vine and visiting our son. And so we made our plans. Before long, Kenny brought me news of my third son. He was doing well, he said. His employer was well pleased with his work. He would be well looked after, and I had no cause for his anxiety. The boy would soon be writing to me himself. It is very kind of you to tell me, I said. You have done so much for me and mine. It is nothing, he said. You ask little. I glanced at him sitting there in our hut with long, haggard face and eyes like a kingfisher's wing, living among us who were not his people, in a country not his own, and of a sudden I was moved to ask him if he was indeed alone. Alone? He said. I am never alone. Do you not see the crowds always at my door? Have you ever known me to lack a following? I did not mean that, I said, quietly waiting. He did not reply at once. His face had shriveled. I have offended him, I thought, panic overcoming me. Why did I have to speak? The silence deepened. Then at last he looked up. I am surprised you have not asked me before, he said. It is many years since I saw you in your mother's house. Well, I thought, if I have not asked, it is because I have not dared. There is a look about you that is quelling, and your manner forbids such talk. I said awkwardly, I have thought about it more than once, but it is not my place to ask questions. You come and go, and it is your own concern. I do not know what made me ask you now. Yet, since you have asked, I will tell you, he said. I have the usual encumbrances that men have, wife, children, home, that would have put chains about me. But I resisted, and so I am alone. As for coming and going, I do as I please, for am I not my own master? I work among you when my spirit wills it. I go when I am tired of your follies and stupidities, your eternal, shameful poverty. I can only take you people, he said, in small doses. I was silent, taking no offense. Barbed words, but what matter from one so gentle? Harsh talk from one in whom the springs of tenderness gushed abundant, as I knew. I told you what I did in a moment of lunacy, he said. I do not want it repeated. I'm not cursed with a gossip's tongue, I said, annoyed. I would not repeat what you have said. Never. Understand? I understand. He rose to his feet, and without another word was gone, walking with long, quick strides, and stooping a little as always. A strange nature, only partly within my understanding, a man half in shadow, half in light, defying knowledge. Chapter 13. That year the rains failed. A week went by, 2. We stared at the cruel sky, calm, blue, indifferent to our need. We threw ourselves on the earth and we prayed. I took a pumpkin and a few grains of rice to my goddess, and I wept at her feet. I thought she looked at me with compassion, and I went away comforted, but no rain came. Perhaps tomorrow, my husband said. It is not too late. We went out and scanned the heavens, clear and beautiful, deadly beautiful, not one cloud to mar its serenity. Others did so too, coming out as we did, to gaze at the sky and murmur, perhaps tomorrow. Tomorrows came and went, and there was no rain. Nathan no longer said perhaps. Only a faint spark of hope, obstinately refusing to die, brought him out each day to scour the heavens for a sign. Each day the level of the water dropped, and the heads of the paddy hung lower. The river had shrunk to a trickle. The well was as dry as a bone. Before long, the shoots of the paddy were tipped with brown. Even as we watched, the stain spread like some terrible disease, choking out the green that meant life to us. Harvesting time and nothing to reap. The paddy had taken all our labor and lay now before us in faded, useless heaps. Savaji came to collect his master's due, and his face fell when he saw how much was lost, for he was a good man, and he felt for us. There is nothing this year, Nathan said to him, not even gleanings, for the grain was but little advanced. You have had the land, Savaji said, for which you have contracted to pay. So much money, so much rice. These are just dues. I must have them. Would you have me return empty-handed? Nathan's shoulders sagged. He looked tired and dispirited. I came and stood beside him. Ira and the boys crouched near us defensively. There is nothing, Nathan repeated. Do you not see the crops are dead? There has been no rain and the river is dry. Yet, such was the contract, else the land would not have been rented to you. What would you have me do? The last harvest was meager. We have nothing saved. Savaji looked away. I do not know. It is your concern. I must do as I am bid. What then? The land is to be given to another if you cannot make payment. Go from the land after all these years? Where would we go? How would we live? It is your concern. I have my orders and must obey them. Nathan stood there, sweating and trembling. Give me time, he said at last humbly, until the next crop. I will pay then somehow. Pay half now, Savaji said, and I will try to do as you wish. He spoke quickly, as if to give himself no time to repent of his offer, and hurried away even before my husband had assented. No easy job for him, I said. He is answerable even as we are. That is why he and his kind are employed, Nathan said bitterly, to protect their overlords from such unpleasant tasks. Now the landlord can wring from us his moneys and care not for the misery he evokes. For indeed it would be difficult for any man to see another starve and his wife and children as well, or to enjoy the profits of such travail. He went into the hut and I followed. A few mud pots and 2 brass vessels, the tin trunk I had brought with me as a bride, the 2 shirts my eldest sons had left behind, 2 auloks of dal, and a handful of dried chilies left over from better times. These we put together to sell. "Rather these should go," said Nathan, "than that land should be taken from us. We can do without these, but if the land is gone, our livelihood is gone, and we must thenceforth wander like jackals." He stared a while at what we had to sell, and made an effort to say something, and tried again. At last he said, choking, "The bullocks must go. Otherwise, we shall not have enough." But when we had added them, and reckoned, there was still not enough. "There are the saris left," I said, "good ones and hardly worn, and these we must sell." I brought out the red sari that had served for both my wedding and my daughter's, and the sari and dhoti I had bought when Thambi worked at the tannery, made a parcel of them, and set out. "Ah, Rukmani," said Biswas with false welcome, "what brings you here? I have not seen you for a long time, nor had any of your succulent fruit. Would that be what you bear with you?" "No, indeed," I answered shortly, his voice grating on me as always. "For the earth is parched to dust, and all that I grew is dead. The rains failed, as you know." Yes, he said, looking at me with his cunning eyes. "These are hard times for us." Not for you, I thought. You thrive on others' misfortunes. "We need money for the land," I said. "I have brought the 2 shirts my sons no longer need, being away, 2 saris I never wear, and my husband's dhoti to sell to you. The saris are very finely worked, and worn but a few times." I took them out and laid them before him. He fingered the rich stuff and measured the borders between outstretched thumb and little finger, and lifted up the silver threads to examine them the closer, and held up the shirts to the light for sign of wear. "How much do you want for these?" "It is for you to make the offer." "Tell me first how much you want, and I will see what I can do." "Enough to pay the land dues." "How much is that?" "It is my business." He was silent for a while, and I said to him, exasperated, "Tell me if you are not prepared to buy, and I will go elsewhere." "Always in haste," he rebuked me in that gentle, oily voice of his. "Yet I think this time you will have to await my pleasure, Rukmani." "What do you mean?" I said, ruffled. "There are many who would be pleased to buy such a good material." "I think not," he said, "I think not. For, you see, the wives of other men have come to me, even as you have, and have gone away as you threaten. Yet they have to come back to me, because nobody else can afford to buy in these hard times." "As no doubt you can," I said with contempt, and then an inspiration came to me, and I went on. "Unless you pay a fair price, I shall take these saris elsewhere. There is the Muslim wife of a tannery official whom I know, and she will buy for me as she has done before." "Indeed," he said, a little disconcerted. "Well, Rukmani, since we have done business for a long time, and because you are a woman of spirit, whom I have long admired, I will give you 30 rupees. Nobody could be fairer." "Fairer by far," I retorted. "I will not take one pie under 75 rupees. Take it or not, as you please." I put the clothes away, making a pretense of going to the door. I hoped he would call me back, for in truth I did not know where else to turn. But if not, well, 30 rupees was too far from our needs to be of use. And if I did not get what I asked, I might as well keep the saris. As I got to the door, he called to me. "Very well, Rukmani, I will pay you what you ask, since it will help you." I waited. He disappeared into another room and came back in a few minutes with a sour face and a small leather pouch full of money. He pulled the drawstrings and took from it notes and silver, counting them twice over to make sure. "A very rare price," he said, handing me the money. "Remember always the good turn I have done you." I tucked the money away, making no reply. and I went back with a lighter step than I had come out. Nathan had returned too, having sold the pots and pans, the food, and the bullocks. We pooled the money and counted it, and there was in all 125 rupees, not even the half we had to pay. "There is still the seed," Nathan said. "We must sell that." "What of the next crop?" I said. "If we sell the seed, we may as well give up the land too, for how shall we raise a new crop?" "It is better to be without the seed than bereft of the land in which to plant it. Seed is cheap. It can be bought. I can earn a few rupees, or perhaps my sons." "How?" I cried to myself. "How? Is not my son every day at the tannery? And no one will look at him because of his brothers. And you, my husband, what chance have you when so many young men are festering in idleness?" "It will mean only a few rupees," I said. "Let us not sacrifice the future to our immediate need." "What is the alternative?" he shouted. "Do you think I am blind? And do you not see, or so stupid as to believe that crops are raised without seed? Do you take me for a fool that—" He was not shouting at me, but at the terrible choice forced upon us. This I knew, yet could not prevent my throat contracting or force the tears back into their wells. "Let us only try," I said with the sobs coming fast. "Let us keep our hope for our next harvest." Very well, Nathan exclaimed. "Let us try by all means. We may be kicked for our pains, but what of that? Anything to stop your wailing. Now go. Do not cross me further." He is worried, I thought, smothering my sobs. He is distracted and does not mean to be harsh. I went inside and lay down with the money tied to my body, and at last dozed off into a troubled sleep. In the morning, Savaji came, and my husband took the money and counted it out in front of him. 125 rupees, he said. "Not half what we owe, but the best we can do without selling the seed for the next sowing." "It would only raise a few rupees," I pleaded. "Let us but keep it, and we will repay you twofold." "It is not for me," Savaji answered. "You make payment to another. What shall I say to him that I bring so little? You made promise of half." "Give us a little grace," Nathan said, dragging the words out. "We will make full repayment and over after the next harvesting." So we stood and argued and begged, and in the end Savaji agreed to wait. He took the money and turned to go. Then he hesitated and said a little wistfully, "What I do I must, for I must think of my own. I do not wish to be hard. May you prosper." "May you prosper too," I whispered, hardly able to speak, for his words had left me defenseless. "May the gods give you their blessing." And so he departed. The drought continued until we lost count of the time. Day after day, the pitiless sun blazed down, scorching whatever still struggled to grow and baking the earth hard, until at last it split and great irregular fissures gaped in the land. Plants died and the grasses rotted. Cattle and sheep crept to the river that was no more and perished there for lack of water. Lizards and squirrels lay prone and gasping in the blistering sunlight. In the town, a water reservoir had been built for the tannery workers and their families, but now others were allowed a limited quantity as well. So thither I journeyed every morning, and when I said how many we were, perhaps half a mud pot would be doled out, sometimes a little more, depending upon who was in charge. Then some of the women in their greed began to claim to have more children than they had, and non-existent relatives, and there were jealousies and spite and bitter argument, until at last it was decreed that each person must come in his own right only, not for others, even children and old men. And this put an end to the cheating and quarreling, but it was hard for many who had not their full strength. Then, after the heat had endured for days and days, and our hopes had shriveled with the paddy, too late to do any good, then we saw the storm clouds gathering, and before long the rain came lashing down, making up in fury for the long drought, and giving the grateful land as much as it could suck and more. But in us there was nothing left. No joy, no call for joy. It had come too late. Chapter 14. As soon as the rains were over, and the cracks in the earth had healed, and the land was moist and ready, we took our seed to our goddess and placed it at her feet to receive her blessing, and then we bore it away and made our sowing. When a few weeks had gone by, the seed sprouted, tender shoots appeared, thrusting upwards with increasing strength, and soon we were able to transport the seedlings one by one, and at first they stood out singly, slender, tremulous spires with spaces between, but grew and soon were merged into one thick green field of rustling